Under the Light of the World at War, Warcraft Gamer SI by Saras. Chapter 1. Come on, I grumbled as my hands flickered golden light across the forest. It was pretty hard getting this to work. I had visited Belore, a priest, multiple times to get him to show me the power of the light and how to get it to work. And I finally got the most basic of reactions. Slowly, I prayed more and more, and finally, a tiny burst of light appeared. True light. And the scratch on my arm healed away, as if it had never been. I hadn't scratched myself, but it was a good excuse to learn the spell. Then, once it was finished, before my eyes it came. Spell learned, holy light. I fell back exhausted. That had taken all my mana, and I felt lethargic and tired, but it had worked. Not bad for a 5-year-old elfling. I stared up into the forest canopy for a while, the warm light of the sun beating down, making my exhaustion into a sleepy lethargy instead. A second life was more than I could have asked for, more than I could have hoped for. But a second life on Azeroth? It terrified me when I realized where I was. My parents had often spoken that I had night terrors as a toddler. Of course I did. Azeroth was a hell world, not even touching on the Lich King, and all the death that was coming. Thankfully, as I grew older, I was able to understand where I was in the timeline. Quel'Thalas hadn't even truly faced the trolls yet. That was at least 1,000 years before the games, before the Sunwell would be broken, turning my people into blood elves. I was safe for now. For now. But I had decided once I realized that I had time, that I would be ready. There were characters in Warcraft that could solo armies. I intended to be one of them. No, I intended to be the best of them. First, I needed to learn skills, and so I had started practicing. Magic was obviously something I adored, but learning magic wasn't something taught to elflings. Too many burned down homes. But I had less issues talking to a priest. But if not for the one thing that made me relax and decide I could grow strong, I would have been freaking out. A gamer system. Status. I whispered to the world, and before my eyes it appeared. Alah'Dorah, High Elf, Level 1. Strength 5, Agility 4, Stamina 5, Intellect 3, Spirit 3. Alah'Dorah was my name. It translated into English as Light's Valor? Something like that. Kinda cringe, to be honest. I usually just told people to call me Dora, mostly 'cause I thought it was funny remembering a cartoon from a past life. I looked at my tiny numbers and sighed. Stats were hard. I had done push-ups and sit-ups, and run around a lot to get my stats even as high as they were. Not that they were all that accurate with their terms. Spirit had nothing to do with belief or willpower. It was more about understanding the world. It was complicated, but I had found a way to level it by playing with mana, syncing myself with the words natural mana and copying it, sorta. Intellect wasn't actually how smart you were. At least not entirely. It was more about controlling magic. I guess that made sense considering it was the stat that controlled spell crit. The rest were pretty obvious though. That was me. Starting at 1 in everything, I had done what I could to level up. But it was hard with being a child. Unfortunately, elflings were expected to do a lot even as babies, so I rarely got a day to myself to grind. Also, I was pretty sure there was a malus to my grinding just from being a little kid. Not like a strength of 100 would make sense for me. Dora, where are you? I blinked my eyes, realizing I had almost fallen asleep. Here, I called out as I rose up onto my feet and started hurrying home. I was in our backyard to practice, but Mama was not okay with me wandering off, even if the forest was safe. Well, safe. The fact was, there was magic protecting the area, controlling the weather and everything in between, but monsters still sometimes showed up. And Mama was a ranger. I raced up through the carefully cultivated wild field behind the house, reaching the back porch and taking the stairs as quickly as I could before presenting myself before Mama with a military posture. She looked me over for 2 seconds with a serious face before offering me a salute, which I returned stoically. Then her face melted as she reached down to scoop me up. "Ah, my little daughter is the cutest." She squeaked as she spun me around, earning giggles, because it was fucking fun to be spun around. Benefits of a child's body existed, just like there were negatives. "Welcome home, Mama," I greeted, hugging her tightly, just as tightly as she hugged me. "I'm home, the light of my life." She whispered into my hair, and I smiled as she walked me inside just like that. "Ah, there she is. Running off again, my light?" Papa offered as he looked up from the kitchen table. I threw him a smile that he returned with his sort of wide-eyed look that was always on his face. Papa was probably a little autistic, if such a thing was understood here in Azeroth. He was sort of confused about things quite often, and he'd forget everything else existed around him while he worked, which I had abused to get some free time more than once. He was also a master enchanter, like super amazing enchanter. But he was out here gathering regents from the forest specifically because he was a complete failure in politics, which was a required element in Silvermoon. At least that is what I had gathered from the whole situation, and conversations made around a baby that wasn't expected to understand. Papa was basically banished from the city because those jealous of his talent in enchanting had ruined his reputation. I don't know what exactly had been concocted that he had done, but it wasn't my concern. 'Cause enchanting shit was the coolest thing ever, and Papa had no issue with explaining what he was doing while I sat on his knee. Mostly because he tended to just chatter about enchanting anytime he was distracted with any enchanting thing. He loved it, was obsessed with it. Honestly, I could only assume Mama had coded herself in enchanting regents to trick Papa into even realizing she existed at first. Well, Mama and Papa definitely loved each other, though. Mama carried me over and placed a warm kiss onto Papa's cheek, which he blinked at in surprise, before smiling at his wife. Heh. I think Papa forgot that Mama was in love with him half the time, too. "What were you up to, my light? Not bothering the squirrels again?" "I wasn't bothering them," I denied Mama with a glare. The squirrels had decided to make their nut storage right inside my bedroom, so I had to do something. Just because I hadn't expected the Squirrel Nation to attack? I shook it off as Mama giggled at me as she settled me onto the chair beside Papa, and then settled herself down as well. Mama was a ranger, so she was often gone, scouting around the forests for dangers. She took it seriously, and probably expected me to join her as a ranger as well when I grew up. Which was definitely possible. As much as I wanted to learn magic, I was aware enough to know that I hated politics and all the problems with arrogant, all-powerful nobility. I'd definitely call someone a fucking loser and have to fight my way to freedom. Best to just skip it and learn myself. I was a gamer after all. Four, I growled as I did another push-up, my noodle elf arms waggling like boiled spaghetti. I flopped to the grass. Nope, that was my limit. Ugh, I groaned as I rolled over. Mama had only been able to stay at home for the afternoon before heading out once more, leaving me with some unexpected free time. I decided to grind some stats, but I had already hit my limit. My legs ached from running, my stomach was sore from sit-ups, and now my arms hurt. I closed my eyes and breathed in. My mana was fully refilled. "Holy light," I whispered, activating the knowledge that I had gained from finally completing the spell, and warm golden light flowed over me, stronger and brighter than what I had originally achieved. My aches ceased. I blinked. Sure, I was low on mana and so now lethargic, but I felt great. "Nice," I whispered, falling back and just planning on taking a nap in the grass. "Holy light level 1, 1 out of 10. I had opened the status screen while resting and looked over this new change to it. Holy Light was the first spell I had, and so I had no idea what any of this meant, but I could guess. I checked my mana, and I was a ways off from being able to cast it again. So I just rested waiting, letting myself recover, and a few minutes later when I was ready, I cast the spell again. Holy Light level 1, 2 out of 10. Yep, numbers had gone up. Sweet, I whispered as I forced myself up, even as my mind felt drowsy. Time to do some more grinding while I could. How is it going? Marika asked as she looked over my shoulder. I think I got it, I offered, and she checked my work on the slate that I was using to do my classwork. There were 3 children in the village we lived in, which was actually a lot for such a small village apparently. So we had been gathered up despite some age differences and given lessons. Each student was given lessons overall, but expectations changed depending on their level. I could write, for instance, and so I was given questions and things I had to answer with writing. Language, history, culture, math, even a few mana control lessons were all taught by different adults. The oldest of us, Savkanara, was even given lessons on enchanting and things. Funnily enough, they didn't have Papa come in and try to teach. He wasn't very good at it. The one time they had tried, he had gotten distracted and just wandered off midway through. Acceptable. Although your 4th answer is not right, Marika said. The woman was actually the village head, a daughter of lesser nobility that had left Silvermoon to manage the small village that we all lived in. Technically, it had a name. The Eastern Forest Outpost, number 4? Yeah. For the very pretentious high elves to leave a place with a name like that, it really spoke of how small and unimportant we were. But Mama and Papa liked it. It meant that even the noble in charge was barely that. Marika was nice. She was old, although you wouldn't know it, and had accepted this job to get away from the politics in Silvermoon. Or at least, that is what Mama had said once. Being a kid meant people didn't really tell you the whole truth of things. What's wrong with it? I asked. The question was about threats to Silvermoon, and I had answered the trolls. The lesser creatures can be dangerous, but we are talking more larger threats, little one. Like, if a civil war broke out. That would be bad, wouldn't it? She asked, speaking to me a little childishly, but I just blinked at her with my wide eyes. The high elves really were arrogant idiots. The trolls are dangerous, though, I argued, and she tittered at me. Even if the trolls manage to gather into a great army, which honestly, little one, is impossible, they eat each other after all. The Bandinoriel would stop them. She giggled at my flat look. The barrier that could be activated to protect Silvermoon was amazing. It would in fact stall the trolls in the future, and if I remember right, it would stop the orcs as well. Then it would fail against Arthas. Nothing was impregnable. Also, the trolls weren't that stupid. They absolutely would gather an army and attack us. Right, I said instead, agreeing with the woman, and that was that. I really needed to get stronger soon. I couldn't trust the high elves to act to a real threat reasonably at this rate. I excused myself to the bathroom a little after and cast another Holy Light. Holy Light level 1, 6 out of 10. It wasn't much, but I was slowly grinding it up when I could to see what happened. Dora! Dora! A voice whined in my ear as I was trying to finish my work, but I wasn't going to be able to. Yes, Kimmy? You're so boring. Let's go play. Marika is distracted with Savkanara. She whispered now, which I knew would only tell the woman that Marika was up to something. But at the same time, I was bored of this. I looked down and finished the last question I was on and then pushed it away. Yes! She hissed loudly and tugged me up. Kimmy was actually 2 years older than me, and you would think that would make her less likely to want to play with me. But I was much more mature than a normal 5-year-old, And also, I was the only other child in the village as close to her age. Hinky didn't count, because he was a boy, and almost 10. We wandered off Marika's porch where lessons were taking place, and out into her backyard. To a child, it seemed like a wild forest, but I knew the entire land was purposefully grown and adjusted, and so very safe. But Kimmy took it like she was traveling through dark jungles whenever she dragged me onto an adventure. It was fun, though, so I didn't mind. "Look!" Kimmy called out as a bird above us chattered away, probably telling its family we were there. But it was pretty, and the little girl was locked onto it, unable to tear her eyes away. I just stretched, loosening up from sitting all morning. "I wonder what he's saying," she whispered, and I looked up at the bird and considered it. "I don't know. Why don't you learn and tell me about it someday?" "What?" Her neck snapped to me as she nearly grabbed me. "You can talk to animals? Why has no one ever told me?" She screamed and I winced. Our long ears weren't just for show. They were sensitive. "Well, I don't think we have any culture for it. But that's what druids do," I offered, and her eyes were wide and round. Their pearlescent blue shimmered with desire. "How?" "Sorry, Kimmy, I don't know," I answered, and then her eyes filled with tears. "Oh no. But I'm sure if we ask the adults, someone will know how to become a druid. You might have to go to the humans or something to find one, though." "I will. I'll be a druid, so I can speak to all the birds." "I'll do it," she demanded, and then ran off, making it half a dozen steps before her foot caught a rock and she smashed face first into the dirt. I winced as the loud thud hadn't been quiet. "Wah!" She screamed, voice rising up louder and louder as I hurried over. "It's okay, Kimmy. Come here, come here." I urged her, but she was fighting me. Instincts to run to someone that can give her comfort winning out over my words. So I just charged up a holy light and slapped it into her back. The light caused her to stutter, even if her wailing didn't end there, but it did quiet, slowly trickling off as she realized she wasn't in pain. Although that didn't stop the waterworks. A moment later, I had a bigger elfling wrapped around me and bawling into my shoulder. Holy light level 1, 7 out of 10. Well, I got something out of it at least. That night, I finally did it. In the privacy of my room before going to bed, I was able to cast the spell again, and I shivered as I felt myself change. I would be able to cast Holy Light with more strength now. Holy Light level 2, 0 out of 20. I looked over the stat and nodded. I could work with that. It was getting late. But I let myself just relax in my bed, slowly regathering my mana until I could cast the spell again. I was curious what the difference was going to be, and so slowly, even as I started drifting off, my mana refreshed. And then when I realized it, I rubbed my eyes clean of the dream I had nearly fallen into and sat up. "Holy light," I whispered, and the power surged, bright and powerful and safe. And then I instantly felt my entire mana pool vanish and then more. I slumped into unconsciousness. "This isn't going well," I muttered. Holy Light level 2, 2 out of 20. I had cast it again after waking up, to test, and got the same results. To cast level 2 Holy Light, I instantly passed out from mana exhaustion, which wasn't good. It wasn't really healthy. What was worse? Casting Holy Light level 1 didn't raise my skill. I had to cast the upgraded form, so I needed some way of enhancing my mana pool. Luckily, I did have some options, and the most interesting one was downstairs. "Papa, if I wanted to increase my mana pool, what's the best cheap enchantment for that?" Papa asked, looking away from his work in his private office. He had been tinkering with an amulet, likely a commission. Papa might have fled Silvermoon, but that didn't mean people didn't want access to a master enchanter. "Well, the cheapest would be an enchantment of minor mana, but that's really only used to provide mana for bigger works." I want more mana, I explained, and he blinked at me owlishly for a moment. It took him a while to sort of process what I said, and then he opened his mouth to speak before stopping and seemingly thinking more on it. Your natural mana pool will grow as you grow, so there is no rush, he said, then nodding confidently, looking a little proud of himself. Which, okay, that was good dad advice to a child, but not really what I need, Papa. Okay, but can you teach me enchantment anyways, so I can learn? Alah'Dorah, growth. It comes slowly sometimes. He struggled to try and come up with the right words, and I relaxed, taking a breath myself. I was anxious because I wanted to grind, but Papa was kinda right. Rushing it would be silly. But that didn't change that I wanted more. Okay, can you teach me how to enchant stuff anyways? Not the mana enchantment then, but I do want to learn. Papa blinked and seemed to consider it, before nodding slowly. I think that would be fine. I smiled as Papa picked me up and put me on his lap, and started talking as he tinkered with the amulet before him. He was making an amulet that would make the skin of the wearer sparkle and glow for some noblewoman. It was a stupid enchantment, but Papa was explaining how he was making a completely new enchantment for this, and so that I paid a lot of attention to. Allah, be a dear and take this over to Hestara, Marika called out as class ended the next day, holding a small package in her hands. Gasp! I said, suddenly excited as I reached into my bag and pulled out an actual little journal. When I had proven I had learned how to write quickly. Papa had gotten this for me. I rushed over, scrambling for a pencil out of my backpack. The piece of graphite, thankfully not lead, was held up ready. It's just down the way. Marika tried to wave me off, but I just smiled up at her and waited. Everyone knew the deal. You send me on a quest, it goes into the journal. Do you have any idea how hard it was to keep track of quests without a quest log? I had come up with this solution after learning to write. It was quite literally the way to do it. Fine, she said, sounding a little frustrated but willing to play along. Marika needs this package delivered to Hestara at the watchtower on the edge of town without delay. She added the last bit, well aware. If she didn't, then it was on my time, not hers. I finished writing it down and nodded. Quest accepted. I spoke formally and closed up the journal and placed it in my bag, holding out a hand to take the small package, which I realized felt like some food or something. I nodded and hurried away, ignoring the older woman's chuckles at my eccentricity. It might seem silly, and it was, but I was building a habit. Imagine what would happen if I took a quest that sent me across the continent and then I forgot what I was even sent to gather. Writing it down was important, so my quest log was filled out on any quest I was sent on, no matter how tiny. I raced down the grassy road, down a few buildings, and to the watchtower on the edge of town. It was more of a temporary home for any rangers traveling through than anything else, but Hestara was here. I knocked on the door and waited for a few moments before the door opened. Hestara wasn't a ranger. He was actually a priest, although not the one I had bothered to learn how to do magic from. He traveled around to heal or support other rangers as needed. A wandering priest, basically. Delivery for Hestara from Marika. 1 package. Please sign here. I offered, pulling out my journal and showing the quest entry. The man wasn't used to me. We hadn't really met before. But he took my words at their face value, nodding slowly, taking the package and signing his name in my journal. Thank you, I told him, pleased. Another quest completed. I mean, sure, I wasn't getting stuff out from the ether for finishing a quest. I had no quest system in my gamer stuff, but it was better this way. Huh. Well, if it's a quest, you get a reward, right? He offered as I stuffed away my journal and nodded eagerly. Yes. Well, in that case, I was just given a few cookies. I believe one would be an acceptable reward, wouldn't it? He said, having opened the package to find some of Marika's baking safely inside, including a handkerchief. Oh my, how forward, Marika. But that was secondary to what was important. Yes, please, I agreed, and he laughed as he handed me one of the confections and then patted me on the head. Finishing quests was the best. Chapter 2. Profession Learned, Enchanting Level 1. Heh 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 heh. I cackled to myself as I kicked at the bedding I was hiding under. It had only taken a bit of wheedling to have Papa let me make a very simple enchantment. And there it was. The basic knowledge of enchanting had flooded me, and I knew that this ability would be far less constrained by stats. Enchanting didn't care about stats. It was all about knowledge, and that was something I just gained outright from leveling. So all I had to do was practice. That unfortunately was more limited. This wasn't like WoW. You didn't get enchanting reagents from breaking down magical items. Well, not just from that. You could still do that, of course, but the main source of it was magical sources. Perhaps a crystal or something set out to gather sun or moonlight until it becomes slightly magical. Break that down, and boom. Enchanting goop. Plants, rocks, crystals, animals, metals. Lots of stuff gathered magic in Azeroth, and I would need to find them all. Or at least something I could use to level up. Instantly I realized I knew how to prep some reagents. Let's see. I sat up as I held my little stamina amulet I had made and threw it on, letting the magic flow through me, giving me a bit more endurance. Hopefully that would help me train more. But more importantly, I glanced around my room, lit only by the moonlight flooding through the window. The open-air designs of high elf buildings were perfect, but I also had to be careful. Mama had the elf ears. She'd hear everything. But I had to risk it. I stood up and carefully slipped off my bed, and then towards my chest of junk. Toys and things I'd collected. Thankfully, there weren't really a lot of toys. Despite high elf kids usually getting flooded with stuff, I was more interested in other things, so Mama had actually quickly stopped buying me dolls. I looked at the few dolls she'd gotten for me when I was little and shuddered. Terrifying. I opened my toy chest as quietly as I could, and then, since it was kind of dark, smirked and used holy light, giving me a few seconds of light to see inside, to pick out my goal. A rock. Well, it was a pretty rock I'd collected while exploring, but it would do. I took it and carried it over to the center of the room where the moonlight was glowing brightly, and settled it down. I'd need some. I hurried to an art set that Mama had gotten me when I was on my practicing skills kick. I'd really just been working on learning the language. It had taken a while for me to get Thalassian unlocked. I really wanted to learn Common as well. It'd help a lot when I started adventuring. I shook that away and found what I wanted. A stick of chalk that I snatched up and walked back to the center of the room. Mama would be mad when she saw it. I knew that. But magic. One must accept risk when performing magic, even if being scolded sucked. I knelt down and thought back to what I had learned. Then I started drawing. Gamer powers were OP. I felt my smile stretch as I started drawing out a foot-wide glyph. It was funny. I hadn't really thought about glyphs much. I remember seeing them sometimes while questing in Warcraft, but adventurers never really got to play with them. And it made sense why. They were more about preparing something than big battle skills. But for enchanting, I needed materials. I looked it over. The moonlight gave the white chalk a stark contrast on my hardwood floors. It was good. I put the chalk to the side and then considered how I wanted to do this. Mnemonics were good for magic. Habits let you perform the magic easier, with less mental strain. Huh. Well, if I was doing magic sigils, I slapped my hands together and then pressed them on either side of the glyph. Glyph Creation Level 1. It worked. I panted a bit that had taken some mana out of me, and I knew that I'd have to power it up again and again to keep it working. Yet it was active for now. I put the rock into the center of the glyph and watched as it slowly gathered mana from the air. Considering where we were, there was a whole bunch too, thanks to the sunwell. So I watched as slowly the rock started glowing. One chunk of enchantment material well on its way to completion. I got up and slipped into bed before Mama heard me and thought I wasn't trying to sleep. Maybe I'd avoid a scolding? Really, Dora? What is this? Mama demanded, hands on her hips as I sat in Caesar on my bed, head bowed. Mama had noticed the glowing glyph and rock in my room almost as soon as the sun rose and had woken me up. Apparently, Mama checked in on me in the mornings before heading out for her ranger duties. Oops. I tangled my fingers together, poking at them cutely to try and seem innocent and adorable, and definitely not punishable. I just wanted to make some enchanting stuff. Enchanting. You etched a glyph into your floor for enchanting. Light of my life, you know better than to. I guess you are your father's daughter, Mama muttered, and I felt a bit of hope. Yes, blame it on my genes. See, this is all your fault. I very carefully didn't actually say that, though. I was hopeful, not an idiot. What's this? Papa's voice cut in. He looked sleepy, and from the way he was blinking, I think he was on the other end of tired. He probably hadn't slept yet. He ignored Mama and her hands on hip power pose, or me on the bed. He looked at the glyph and blinked in surprise, instantly lowering himself to the ground and looking over it with much less tired eyes. Oh? Oh, I see. Yes, that would do that. Oh, interesting? Aaron? Oh? He looked up and saw Mama and seemed to notice her for the first time. Huh. My dear, our daughter did that, Mama said, and pointed, and once more Papa looked at my glyph and made a noise of interest. Mama, realizing Papa wasn't understanding, added, "She made a glyph on her bedroom floor without supervision." I qualified as she had rounded on me to remind me of that. "This is well done," Papa said, and Mama instantly looked heated as her ears went a little red in irritation. "That's not the point, my love," she added, never taking her eyes off me. "Alah'Dorah?" "Yes, Papa," I asked immediately. "You did this?" "Yes. I just wanted some more enchanting reagents. See, I made an amulet like you showed me," I offered, pulling the amulet off my chest, and Papa rose up and wandered past Mama, who was not happy, as he reached out and cradled the amulet. He seemed actually amused at it, which made sense. It was just some string tied around a pretty piece of quartz that I'd found. It was basic and childish, but it now had a little glow in the crystal. It was an amulet of stamina. You made this?" he asked, and I nodded, and then his smile grew big and bright, and soon I was lifted off my bed. My usually not-so-affectionate Papa lifted me up and spun me around, actually laughing in delight. "Really, Aran?" Mama sighed, but she couldn't keep herself from smiling either at Papa's delight. "A little enchantress. Look at this. Felamin. Look." "I see it well, my love," she grumbled, unable to punish me anymore. "Success." "Dora!" Kimi whispered, yelled at me as I looked up from my project. "Kimithas?" Marika barked out, glaring, and the little girl quelled under her glare. I just kept my head down and in my book, trying to pretend I wasn't part of this. Inside voice when you speak, and do not speak during my lecture. "Yes, Marika," Kimi said, sitting up straight, and I relaxed when Marika went back to teaching. I did send Kimi an apologetic look, but that, as far as I could go. Not inside the class anyways. I glanced up at the board. More political talk about Silvery Moon and how amazing it was. I looked at the book on my desk. It was a common language primer. Not something very common, especially at this point the human kingdoms weren't. Like at all. Humanity was very much barbarians at this point. This primer was mostly just a few words to make the humans shut up and go away. "I'll burn you into ash," was one of the phrases after all. I just needed to learn enough of the language to get the skill, though. "All right, take a break. I can see steam coming out of those elfling ears," Marika called out, and I grinned as I put the book away. Skills were nice, but playing was better. "Dora!" Kimi shrieked and grabbed me before I was even done and yanked me behind her. Well, I guess we were playing Kimi games today. The class rushed out of the tree-formed schoolhouse and into the wild area behind it all as we all split off depending on age to play our games. "Dora, I wasn't able to find out anything about druids. I want to talk to the birds." Kimi whined and I just shrugged. "I'm sorry, Kimi. I don't know how to do it." "But look at them." She pointed at not just the birds in the trees but also a tiny dragonhawk. "I just want to talk to them, so they know we're friends so I can pet them." "You could try talking to a hunter. You can make a bond with an animal." "No, I want to be a druid. I want to talk to all of them," she demanded and then turned to me. "I won't give up." Well, at least she was energized about it. "Hup!" I swung the wooden stick. "Hup!" And again. While Papa was very excited for my enchanting success and had started really trying to teach me as best as he was able, I still needed time for other things. I swung a stick. "Hup!" An adventurer couldn't rely only on magic. I would train it all. Magic, fighting skills, professions. There was a danger coming in the future, horrors beyond comprehension, and a stupid moron that would lower the Bandinorial to let Arthas walk right to the Sunwell. I didn't want that to happen. As stupid and lazy as the High Elves were, the Blood Elves weren't a better option. No, they caused plenty of trouble in their own way. I would grow strong enough that I could put a stop to it all. At that thought, I glared around looking for any stupid bronze dragons, not seeing anything that could be them or could transform into them. I relaxed and went back to swinging. Stupid dragons. Stupid timeline bullshit. I was going to go find Alah'Dorah and tell her to put the stupid bronze on a fucking leash or something. Only after I told her that the bronze dragonflight would allow her to be enslaved and, well, not treated well by the orcs, all because of their stupid timeline bullshit. "See how you like that, Chromie, you little shit?" I shook off the annoyance and swung my sword. Stick. Hup! Weapon skill. Learned swords. I stilled as I read through it, as the knowledge hammered home. "Woohoo!" I cheered, shouting as I jumped in the air. I could do it. I could just practice nonsense until I got the skill. Now I needed something I could use as a shield. Gonna be a tank. Tanks were the best class, after all. It used to be a gazebo, but it had been torn down a long time ago, just leaving the little wooden platform. With Mama's help, I'd cleaned it off, and now it was working as my enchantment reagent creation space. Papa, of course, thought my process was interesting, in his own words, but he was able to get 100 times what I could get just from wandering a forest for a bit. But learning this now would be useful for the future. I picked up one of the glowing rocks in the center of the array of glyphs and nodded. It was ready, just like Papa had shown me, and my own enchanting skill taught me. I carried it over to the house and picked up a bowl to store the reagents. Then, with a breath, I started deconstructing the material. Slowly, it started cracking and turning to powder in my hand, and soon enough, I had a pile of glowing white powder. Heavily moon-influenced, thanks to the moonlight I used for this batch. I poured it into a tub filled with more white powder and looked at the other tub that was glowing a yellowish red. Sun-influenced reagents, too. For now, I was just using it as generic inscription reagents, but eventually I'd need the different elements for more complex enchantments. I glanced at my little menu and nodded. Enchanting level 6, 12/60. The leveling process had been, fast enough. Each level up had given me more knowledge, and my process had become more refined. Papa was super proud. Although I was thankful he hadn't actually asked me where I'd learned some things yet. Mama and Papa both assumed I'd been absorbing knowledge at Papa's knee so far. But I knew eventually I'd grow too fast for that to keep what I was doing hidden. I shrugged, and instead pulled out another box. Adjusting myself on the little chair on the porch that looked over the pretty backyard, I started stringing amulets. Just rocks or even pieces of bark that I'd tie up with twine to work as pseudo-amulets. Unfortunately, the power and efficiency of an enchantment was influenced by the physical material, but for now I was still able to enchant and disenchant my little amulets to get more experience. I grabbed one of the finished amulets, and then found a flat section as I reached my hand into the moon reagents. Then I poked the powder, using a bit of magic to stick it to my finger, and brought it up to the little amulet. As I pressed my finger, my magic flowed and left a trail of the powder in the rock, slowly creating the glyph that would hold the magic. Then it was done. Another simple enchantment. This one, a strength buff. I looked it over. Enchanting level 613/60. Just another million of these to go to keep leveling enchanting. So learning some skills was nearly impossible without someone to help. I spent more than a week of my free time with a piece of wood I'd found and strapped to my arm as a makeshift shield, trying to learn the skill only for it to just not work, which is why I'd gotten help. "I don't know, Dora. This seems dangerous," Kimi whispered, looking at the stick in her hand. "It's fine. Just don't aim for my face and I'll block it," I offered, peeking out from behind the chunk of bark and wood. "Don't blame me if you start crying." "I won't," I agreed. Kimi hadn't wanted to do this at first. She wasn't one for violence, surprisingly enough, more the one with nature type, but a magical amulet that glittered constantly was a good trade for her help. "I understand, Papa. Elves are weak against glittery stuff. Thank you for your lessons." "Okay, okay, here I come." "Rah!" she charged, raising the stick up and swinging. I held up the shield, wincing as the stick bashed it into my arm, but a little discomfort was well worth it. "Are you okay?" "Again," I called out, and Kimi soon started getting into it, swinging again and again as I just huddled behind the shield. "Come on, give me the skill." "Dora, I'm getting tired." Kimi whined, and I peeked over the shield as she was huffing a bit. "Just a few more?" I asked, and Kimi whined, but got up and took a batter stance, funnily enough, before swinging. I blocked it, but nothing. And then another. I was blocking the strikes, but there was no skill. I was starting to get frustrated. I could feel my neck heat up. My ears were probably bright red in frustration. It made me distracted. I thought Kimi had stopped again, so I peeked out from behind the shield, only to see her lining up a big swing and going for it. Then, instead of a perfect block, my shield was out of the way, and instead, I had to push back, swinging the shield against her strike to push it away. I yelped, unbalancing, and ended up on my ass, but at least I didn't get smashed in the face. Then it happened. Armor proficiency learned shield. Yes! I cheered from the ground, arms raised. That was it. "Thank you, Kimi." "Okay, great." She fell to the ground as well, and I couldn't help but laugh in delight at unlocking a new skill. Armor proficiency, huh? I'd need plate armor. Only problem is, high elves don't usually use plate armor. Spellbreakers sort of did. That was going to be expensive, huh? Unless I made it myself. Did I want to learn blacksmithing? Could I learn blacksmithing? That would take a long time. Ugh. One skill unlocked. A dozen more added on. "Really, Dora, how do you get yourself into these messes?" Mama asked, and I just smiled and shrugged. "It was a quest." "It was a quest," Mama said with a sigh. "You know, even if someone offers you a quest, you can just say no." But she needed help. I'm pretty sure Savkanara was supposed to clean the stables herself as punishment. That wouldn't happen to have anything to do with this quest leaving you in Dragonhawk droppings? Mama said, and I winced. Yeah, she didn't even sign my quest log either. I muttered, very much not digging into my bag considering how messy I was. See? It wasn't a quest at all. She was tricking you. Even if she wasn't doing it honestly, it was still a quest. I denied. Besides, I got something out of it too. Savkanara might be a moody teenaged high elf, but she was also a moody teenaged high elf, and when you needed something done on the sly, that the adults would never help you with, you went to the moody teenaged high elf. I wasn't technically lying to Mama that Savkanara didn't sign my quest. I just didn't admit that this quest wasn't going in the book. Come on, let's get you in a bath, Mama said with a sigh. I was really unlucky she was home. I was planning on just dumping all my stuff in the backyard and jumping in a pond. Dragonhawk's poop smelled really bad. But she was home, and so my clean getaway with this quest was unfortunately being looked into. Oh well, Mama wouldn't check my bag while I took a bath, so she wouldn't find the contraband. Probably. Chapter 3. Under the blankets and using an amulet that glowed when worn, I stared at my contraband. A spellbook. It wasn't a rare or powerful spell, but I was an elfling. Magical spells and children are not something many want to mix. Savkanara as a teenager didn't care and would just laugh at any fireworks. But that wasn't going to happen because this was a very simple spell. The Precepts and Foibles of Conjuration by Illa Soven. Basically, it was a guide for young mages and rangers on how to conjure something so incredibly important. It was almost considered the standard for any elf leaving Silvermoon or Eversong Forest. Conjure food and conjure water. It was the basics, but very important. And also I'd get in so much trouble if I got caught with an actual spellbook. But none of that mattered, because magic spellbook. Hey, I giggled as I read along. The writing was dry. Illa's was a terrible author, but it didn't matter. I just needed to understand enough to get it right once. If I could do that, I'd get the spell and it would be good. Sure, I could just wait. I considered just waiting until I was a teenager to learn this spell. I mean, I'd definitely be given a copy of this crappy book without having to clear out the Dragonhawk stables. But that was like a decade away. Think of all the grinding I could do in that time. Wouldn't it be terrible if by the time I can conjure water, I have so much mana the water doesn't restore anything? No better to spend the time now on a spell that I could easily hide to get more experience. So I laid under my blanket and read through the stuffy book, following the motions with my hands when it finally got to the description on how to actually cast the spell. It was extremely lucky that I was used to reading dry texts from my past life, because holy cow was this obtuse. Thankfully, I think I got it. Deciding on food first, since if I made a mess, crumbs were easier to clean up than a big spill. I sat up and brought my mana to my hands. There were no words, just motion and will. The mana moved easily. I'd done tons of practice with moving my mana around while learning Holy Light. I shifted. The mana formed it to my will. It came naturally, an artifact of being a high elf, and yet, it wanted to slip away. My mana shifted and tried to spoil the forming spell. I fought it back, grabbed it mentally, and guided it back along the proper path. And then, with a cute little tink, which was actually air escaping as the conjured item forced itself into reality, I stared at what was undoubtedly a muffin. Spell learned, conjure refreshment. I hissed out through my teeth as all I wanted to do was scream and shout. No more sitting on the ground without mana. All that time could now be spent drinking some conjured water and regaining the most glorious of all things. Mana. Conjure refreshment level 1. 1 out of 10. All right. Now to just. I started casting. The spell felt so much easier now that I had the spell on my list. The mana shifted as I wanted. After just a few minutes, I finished casting, and a small, strange, not quite glass bottle appeared. I touched it and realized it felt kind of like stone, but was sort of see-through. Huh. I popped the cork, which disappeared into nothing, and drank to fill up my mana, only to instantly choke and sputter, spilling water all over my pillow. What the fuck was that? Ugh! I wanted to scrape my tongue. Did that water taste soapy? Why? I did feel my mana return from that little bit I drank, but erg, I'd never drink that again. Ever. Never. Ever. I pulled off my blanket and put the half-empty bottle of water, if you could call it that, to the side and grabbed the muffin. I just needed something to wipe this taste out of my mouth. Mistake. This was all a mistake. I understand now. Why a fool playing with magic might be burned. Why an apprentice should be quiet and listen to the lessons taught them in order. I coughed. Wet, half-chewed, gritty, nasty dust muffin fell out of my mouth and onto my hand. What do? It was late. Mama was going to kill me. I looked around. Climbing out of bed, I headed for the window and just chucked what I had in my hands right out. It would land in the backyard and some squirrels could die eating that trash. Now to slip out to the kitchen and drink some water to clean my mouth. Easier said than done. But I sneaked out, carefully shifting my feet not to touch the creaky floorboard, or to make even the smallest of noises. Mama would not be happy to see me up so late. Quiet, quiet. I made it just into the kitchen when I got an alert I wasn't expecting. Ability learned, stealth. Oh! I couldn't stop my gasp of delight, and then stilled at the noise. I'd snuck around before, never got an ability for it, and from what I'd learned that I didn't tend to level without the force acting against me. I hadn't learned shields until I had Kimmy wail on me, and I'd never learned stealth before because no one had been there when I snuck around. Oh, what? Was asked from directly behind me, fission mailed. Oh, I really hope there is some water so I can go back to bed, I offered, turning around to see Mama literally right behind me, arms crossed. Is that so? I got a yucky taste in my mouth, I offered pointedly, keeping my hand closed so she couldn't see the nasty muffin mess I still had all over my hands. Mm-hmm. I swallowed, which was a mistake, and she seemed to notice that. Then she did something I really didn't want to see. You know, I was out back, cooling off under the moon, when suddenly, this nearly smacked into my head. Oh, fuck. Those dang squirrels, I stuttered, the only excuse I could think of, and Mama, despite her stern look. I could see the hitch in her breathing as she wanted to laugh. But she didn't. I've never known squirrels to throw around conjured muffins. In fact, they refuse to eat these ones. You know what they call these in the Guard? I shook my head, but not because I didn't know, but because I was really hoping she'd let me off. Recruit killers. Because the first time a new recruit is forced to eat conjured food on a march, they usually puke. Yeah, I get that, I said, because I was totally boned and nothing I could do would change that. I regret everything, I told her with a whimper, and that only made her fight back laughter again. Let's get you cleaned up. Okay. Then you're grounded. Okay? Conjure food was super disgusting until you got really good at it, and I was stuck slowly leveling it up. Mama had in fact been proud of me for learning the spell so young, but she had not been proud of me for sneaking it past her and not telling her. In the end, I was in trouble, but my own punishment was enough. Level 1, conjure food. Not even once. Luckily, it did dematerialize after a while, so I'd taken to heading into the backyard and just burning mana conjuring what I could until I was out, and then pointedly leaving the water and muffins out for the squirrels to choke on, for the animals to enjoy if they were hungry. Then I went inside and drank nice lemon water that tasted great. It also restored my mana, but it was a bit harder to excuse drinking an entire pitcher of lemon water than it was to just conjure stuff. It turned out that I did in fact restore myself from a snack and drink, and could continue to eat basically indefinitely, which wasn't the norm. Just another gamer quirk that I wasn't going to second guess, because I wanted to grind, and it let me grind more. Or it would. Once I got better snacks and drinks. What that meant was that I was stuck once more slowly grinding up either physical stuff, which wasn't going well, or enchanting, which thankfully didn't have a mana requirement, but did need reagents. The pretty rocks around the backyard had surprisingly vanished. Those damn squirrels again, I was sure. So I had to go a bit farther out of the backyard to drag back a backpack full of rocks I could leave in the sun and the moonlight to get more enchanting powder. Papa thought it was hilarious how much I was storing. Mama not so much. Thankfully, the enchanting coalition of the household succeeded over the stop making a mess of my kitchen uni party, mostly because the enchanting coalition had agreed to a list of demands, but that was just minor details. But it meant that once again, enchanting continued to be my highest skill. Enchanting level 730/70. I had some actual enchantments, but almost none of the cool combat ones. Papa mostly did cosmetics and stuff still, so I learned those at his knee, but I wanted stats. Intelligence was a priority for more mana, but an actual mana enchantment would be even better, but Papa refused to teach me that one still. So that left the slow grind. Enchant, disenchant, enchant. Thankfully, I did get some reagents back when I disenchanted, but I went through a lot of homemade amulets. So much so that I was actually cut off. I'd already run through 3 balls of thread Mama had bought from the store for me, and since I could only explain to her that I destroyed the thread while enchanting, well, that was that. I'd need to make my own. Hmm. Mmm. Mmm. I hummed to some tuneless song as I walked through the forest. Mama was working, Papa was distracted, and I had both a sword, an actual wooden sword Mama had let me pick out from the store, and a wooden shield, which was just my training shield made from bark. But I was on an adventure. Swiping the sword back and forth looked like any kid just swinging around a sword, but I had skill-granted knowledge on how to swing a sword and was actively practicing my side swings. Left and right, shifting with my hips, keeping my shield up and ready to block any attacks, all while I wandered into the forest around home. I needed something, but I wasn't sure what. So instead, I was just exploring. Walking around a big bush, I stopped as I wasn't alone. "Oh, is that little Alah'Dorah?" "Hello," I greeted with a little bow. Eltella was, well, the leader of the village. Not quite a governor. It was closer to say she was the noble who owned the land. She was powerful, but also, she smiled. The wrinkles curled around her lips, and the crow feet around her eyes made her skin seem ancient. Old. Very, very old. I smiled in turn and approached, sheathing my wooden blade as was appropriate into my little shield, and shifting both until my shield and sword were strapped over my shoulder. "Out having a little adventure, young one?" I settled in beside the old woman as she knelt in the dirt, uncaring for her very expensive dress as she was working her hands in the dirt. "A garden? What are you doing, Magistrix?" "Huh, just some minor gardening, young one," she offered, and I smiled in turn as I looked at the dirt she'd troweled up. Such an oddly simple method for a woman that was probably able to wipe this entire village off the map in an hour if she wished. "Do you need any help?" "Oh no, I do this for myself. Help would rather ruin the purpose, but thank you though. Tell me, how is your father?" "Oh, Papa is doing great. He's just enchanting like always." She smiled and laughed. "Yes, that fits the man. Good. The boy was talented. I'm glad he's kept his spark. And you? Your adventure going well?" "Sort of. I'm doing enchanting stuff too," I explained but sighed. "Unfortunately, Disenchanting the little amulets I make as I practice destroys them, and the thread Mama bought me. So I'm trying to find something else to make that I can keep practicing my enchantment. Oh? Enchanting work already? She asked me, and I nodded happily. Yep, I want to master it so I can make all the equipment I need when I go on my adventure. I explained, and the ancient elf's eyes glittered a bit in arcane magic as her smile grew. And what will this adventure be? Defeating some great monster? I responded, shaking my head, smiling as my ponytail wiggled back and forth. I'm going to explore the entire continent. I want to go everywhere, meet everyone. If I have to fight, I'll fight. And if I can trade or learn about whoever I meet, I'll do that. Then, when that's done, I want to go even further. I'll get a boat and set sail west. Or maybe north. Maybe I'll dive into the ocean with some water-breathing spells. Or I'll get something so I can fly and explore the clouds. I gushed about my idea honestly. I was scared of Azeroth. But the only way to not be scared of something was to understand it. So that's what I would do. Every race and kingdom would know of Alah'Dorah as I traveled the world. And maybe I could help. Maybe a single adventurer could help fix things before the bad things happen. What a delightful idea! To see the whole world, she whispered, holding out her trowel to point at me. It's rare to see a child of the Quel'Dore seek more than what is beyond their own nose. Don't lose that little one. It's a rare trait. She wagged the trowel at me for a moment and I nodded. I won't. Good. With you swinging that sword around, I suppose you'll make a fine ranger as well. I want to do magic more. I admit. Then brought my hands together and in a moment and a chiming sound of mana, a muffin appeared. It's gross though. The ancient elf let out a breathy little chuckle. Oh, my memory is long, and I've forgotten more things than most will ever know, but I still bitterly remember the taste of those. She assured me, and I nodded, as I put the muffin in my satchel. It would disappear and take all the crumbs along with it later, but at least I wouldn't have to look at it. You're quite young for that spell. Not even your 10th year, correct? I'm 6, I told her, and that got another reaction as if it all fell into place. 6, truly? So young. Enchanting, magic, and a desire to explore. She hummed at that, and I just grinned. Mama calls me eager. Yes, I believe your mother has the right of it. You said you were exploring to find something to enchant? She asked suddenly, and I nodded, and she smiled. Why don't you go over and pull some of that grass? I'll show you something useful. I didn't hesitate and jumped up and rushed over to the small patches of long grass that sometimes grew around. I pulled a few handfuls before happily wiggling back to her. Eltella had wiped her hands and was sitting comfortably as I approached, and she patted beside her. Now, this is an old skill. Something my own mother taught me. Something, well, it simply isn't done anymore, watch. She swiftly started with 2 strands of the grass, weaving them together, and then slowly adding in more. It didn't take more than a few of the strands, and she had a band of the grass weaved together tightly. Then she spoke words that made my ears wiggle. Illuminador. And then with a twist the band tightened, and all the grass seemed to slide together and tighten more and more as she twisted until the band became a bracelet that looked quite nice. The grass an almost golden color shimmered in the sun thanks to the different strands. The band as she handed it to me, to look at, felt almost smooth to the touch. A whisper band. You offer a prayer and seal it, and the prayer will stay within it. We used to offer them to those going into danger, and when you return, you would release it, and the prayer would be free to be reality. I looked into the very old elf's eyes and wondered if she had been alive before the Sunwell, if she had been one of the highborn that had arrived on these shores, exiled from the night elves. It's very pretty, I said instead. No one spoke of what had been before the Sunwell. I didn't even know if any elf outside of the truly ancient knew or acknowledged it. "Now you try," she prompted, and I nodded. Having watched how she did it, I grabbed 2 strands of the golden grass and promptly failed completely. Her warm laughter urged me to try again, but it wasn't like I was going to quit. So I tried again, and again, until I got the basics. And then, profession learned, tailoring. I smiled. The instinct was suddenly there. The confusion about how to weave and the slowness of my hands disappeared as I finished my first whisper band without any further issue. But just before I finished, before I sealed it shut like she had, I took a moment. Alah'Dorah. I spoke that same prayer and sealed it up. I looked up, and the ancient elf looked a little embarrassed as she realized I had heard her. "A fine job. You seem to have the knack for it, and I've seen whisper bands enchanted before. You should have no issue. The prayer you speak is one for yourself. No need to listen to this old woman's words. I like them. I'll remember them. In thanks for teaching me," I said instead. Elune was a goddess of my people even if we didn't worship her. Eltella smiled gently at my words and nodded. "I believe Elune would like that. But enough about this old woman's ramblings. I believe that marks your adventure complete?" "Yep. I'll need to gather a whole bunch and make a bunch of them. Thank you." I rose up as the woman turned back to her gardening. She seemed like she wanted to be left alone, so I gathered up the grass I'd collected so far and started jogging home. A part of me wanted to ask so many questions, but I'd have to do some research first. Of course, another useful thing about the whisper bands were they weren't amulets. That might seem a little confusing, but enchantments on different sections of the body needed different forms to work right. You can't take an amulet enchantment and wrap it around your wrist and expect it to work right. It had to do with the way the body pulled in mana. Even if you weren't a mage, everyone pulled mana around them, and different places impacted mana differently. So, it let me learn some new enchantments from Papa once I showed him my new material. Instead of stamina, Papa actually taught me something different. Minor Spirit. Such a simple enchantment, but Spirit was how fast your mana restored itself. For a gamer like me, the faster my mana restored, the more I could grind. I looked at the 2 whisper bands around my wrists and smiled. In one, I'd given a prayer to Elune, and the other? Belore de Lana. The sun guides us. I don't agree with pushing away Elune, but I wouldn't deny that the sun and the sunwell as a manifestation of that was important to my people. What a weird situation the sun and the moon both were venerated. Not that the high elves really worshipped as such. We were a bit too arrogant for that. Either way, I settled in after school a few days later with a pile of golden grass beside me and started weaving, letting my tailoring skill increase while setting aside the completed whisper bands for later enchanting, and then disenchanting. And then I would take that dust and use it to enchant the next batch, all of it cycling into itself. Cycles. Cycles. My bands shifted on my wrists, and I remembered that spirit was the connection, the understanding of the world. I understood the world a little better, and through that understanding, I came to understand that enchanting was part of the cycle of magic. I'd made glyphs to speed up the effect, but objects naturally took in magic from Azeroth and then changed, became reagents. But reagents were just things that were already gathering magic to make enchanting easier. Ambient mana into objects, then take those objects and break it down. Cycles. Almost like fish and mercury. What was it? Biomagnification. Since fish ate lots of things with mercury in it, they stored more and more of it, making them dangerous to eat in turn because they'd basically concentrated so much of it. Then wasn't enchanting just mana magnification going through the cycle of materials storing mana. Glyphs let objects absorb mana faster, but the only ones I knew only drew in ambient mana and didn't let it escape, so it would store itself in the object inside. Why not increase that? If enchanting was a natural part of the world, then there was something interesting there. I grinned as I looked at the finished whisper band. I'd finish these, do my enchantments, and keep thinking about how to make even more enchanting reagents. Maybe I could find some way to gather more mana, or create a method to make mana magnification happen. Hehe, magical mad science. But it was almost dinner, so I'd better finish this and make sure Papa knew to eat something, otherwise he'd forget since Mama wasn't here. I hummed happily as I continued to work on my task. Chapter 4. Slow grinding, that was what it was all about. Alah'Dorah, High Elf. Level 1. Strength 7. Agility 8. Stamina 8+1. Intellect 6. Spirit 7+1. I sat up from my morning push-ups, wiping my hands before angling my hands and casting. Conjure refreshment level 423 out of 40. The glass bottle appeared, and I popped the cork and washed my hands and poured the rest over my head. The cool water was still good for that at least. Unfortunately, it wasn't tasty yet, but having water on hand at any moment had a lot of uses, and it was improving. Every level was better. I stood up and stretched. The sun was warm, the wind whispering through the trees was refreshing, and I didn't have school today. Mama was off doing her ranger duties, and Papa was as always distracted with enchanting. He'd received a request from someone important, and had hidden himself away in his workshop for the last few days, only coming out to check on me when he remembered. Usually in a rush, realizing he hadn't been looking after me well. It was cute. My constant grinding had led to some benefits. My mana pool had increased enough that I could actually cast Holy Light level 2 without passing out, and so I'd grinded through the entire second tier. Unfortunately, the small increase in my intelligence, and so my mana pool hadn't kept up, and I was back to the same problem. So once again my grind was halted as I had to focus on other things to keep going. It was frustrating, but okay for now. I could keep working on my fundamentals. Mostly enchanting, as that was the one magical-like skill I had not locked behind a mana pool. Enchanting level 988 over 90. I'd been grinding enchanting, the new whisper bands giving me easy, cheap materials to cast on, and so my grind had increased drastically. Almost level 10. I winced at the light ache in my muscles and core. I was super low on mana, and unless I wanted to drink my conjured water, I should either go do something that didn't need mana or take a break. So more enchanting it was. I walked over to the old pagoda platform and checked on my reagent harvest. I'd been testing something, and it was a good time to see if I got a success. The idea of the mana magnification idea had been eating at me, so I'd done some tests. Unlike normal, I'd gone out a bit farther to collect more than just rocks, and been testing different things to see how they absorbed the mana for reagent use. My little enchanting notebook I'd started filling out was getting a lot of data, but nothing good so far. Rocks were pretty good compared to most things. Most plants didn't retain the mana well, instead actually absorbing the mana and using it, which led to bigger plants if they were still alive, or the plant just sort of wasting the energy trying to do things even as it died. It was not great. But I'd managed to get something interesting to test it with. A sunflower. Well, not a sunflower from Earth, but a flower with bright red and orange petals that was popular here. It looked fiery and had that sort of mana for sure. So I'd collected a pot and put it in my sunlight sigil and left it for a month. It had grown, absorbing mana and using it to fuel its growth, but unfortunately, the mana didn't get retained. It was burned away to fuel an effect by the living plant, so the experiment had been a failure. I mean, my sunflower had grown a lot, and I had in the end sold it for some money, which I'd instantly spent on another pot and flour, and a few other bits and bobs. If nothing else, I had found a way to sell large sunflowers, and that was valuable. The second sunflower hadn't been put in the sunlight sigil, but the moonlight one. It had been a month, and it was time to check out what had happened. It hadn't grown like crazy compared to the other one, but I knelt down and looked over the flower and noticed that it just looked a bit odd. The most important question was, did the different type of mana have a useful effect? I took the flower and disenchanted it. The effect pulled the magical power the flower had gathered, and as the flower disintegrated into dust, it came free in an interesting shimmering color. Most of the reagents I pulled from the rocks were either a moon dust color or something like warm sand. This was a bit different. I grabbed a bowl I kept on hand and dumped the powder inside, getting a smaller amount than I would have liked, but at least I'd gotten something interesting out of it. I couldn't recognize it, but I knew Papa would, so I'd ask him about it later. Then I turned to the many, many rocks that I had gathered. I'd some experiments outside of the flowers as well. Did I get more powder from bigger rocks? Did leaving them to absorb mana for longer make a difference? Could I use the reagents in some way to let the rocks absorb more mana? Most of the answers were yes, but. And the but was the problem. Yes, bigger rocks could absorb more mana, but it took longer linearly. So if I wanted to harvest every morning, then smaller rocks were better. Although I'd set up a few much larger rocks for long-term gathering. Yes, the longer they absorbed sunlight or moonlight, the more mana they gathered, but it very quickly started gathering so little that it was pointless. Could I use powder reagents to increase the speed an object gathered mana? Yes. If I created the sigil with some powder, I could increase the mana inside the sigil, but it used up the powder and only converted the mana in a 1-to-1 shift if I was lucky. So if I had something I wanted to power up quickly, it would work, but otherwise just getting more powder for more enchanting was already useful. I finished disenchanting my rocks and placing new ones before taking the bowls full of reagents to the back porch, where I had a bunch of whisper bands set out. My tailoring skill had improved for a while as I made them until it had eventually just stopped giving me XP, but it was still useful. Tailoring level 5, 150. It was a nice skill to have anyways. If I was going to be an adventurer, I should know how to fix a hole in my clothes. Either way, I sat down in a comfy chair and started enchanting the whisper bands. I finished one and sulked about not getting another level up. I'd started to struggle to get level ups with the basic enchantments I had. I'd need to bug Papa for a better one soon. Either way, I could still level up, and so I kept hammering my head into it. It took about 4 before I got a tick up. Enchanting level 989 over 90. Hey. Then I just kept going. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bing. Enchanting level 10, 100ths. Apprentice enchanting has been learned. Apprentice enchanting. Reduce cost of enchanting. I sucked on my teeth as I felt it flow into my brain and more. Before this, I had known how to do it, but now I had a much better understanding of why. Why do I use specific reagents for an enchantment? I knew bits from Papa, but now I had my own understanding. An understanding of the way mana flowed and gathered into items, and how enchantments used that flow. I knew that I could use less reagents for the same enchantments now. I knew how to better form the enchantment. Awesome. I sat back and just let myself process what I'd just learned. And this was only Apprentice? I really needed to learn more enchantments now. Today we're going to learn a spell, Marika called out, and I jerked in my seat. Spell? Ugh. Savkanara groaned as she looked very uninterested. Marika sent her a smile. Don't complain. You're not learning the same spell as the others this time. She offered, and even Savkanara, the moody teen that she was, sat up straighter at the words. What? Really? Yes. You're old enough to be taught something else. Besides, you already know this spell. Mage Light is a very useful spell no matter your age, but all elflings should know it. I didn't quite slump, because new magic was great, but I wanted something a bit better than Mage Light. I kept a half eye on Savkanara as she was handed a book by Marika, as the teacher then turned towards all of us and started talking. Mage Light was a basic spell. It taught some of the very basic mana manipulation skills, things like controlling mana flow and capturing mana so it didn't just disperse. All things I already knew thanks to Holy Light and Conjure Refreshment, but that didn't mean it wasn't useful. Yet, I couldn't help but look at Savkanara. I grabbed a piece of paper even as Marika started teaching the basics, which I already knew, and made a little note. Then I passed it to Savkanara. Her noticing the paper had her look up at me, and I sent her an innocent look. She snorted and popped the note and looked it over, and instead of writing yes or no on the note like she was supposed to, she just folded it back up and focused on her book. Rude. That went against the rules of the classroom. Either way, I huffed and focused on what Marika was teaching, even if it took a while for Kimi and Hinky to figure out the basics. And so I spent a rather boring morning just following basic mana control instructions that we all were supposed to already know. But then, Marika got to the next part, and not a few moments after she gave the instructions, I opened my palms to a completed spell. Spell learned, Mage Light. The purplish-colored light glowed between my palms, and I grinned as it didn't take much to make me realize I could do a few things. I opened and closed my palms and then had a red light. Then gold, then blue, then white. Ugh! I heard just before Kimmy looked like she was going to throw something at me but stopped herself. Don't be a jerk, Dora. Sorry, Kimmy, I whispered back, holding up my hands in an apology. Want some tips? Yes, she agreed, and soon I moved over as Marika helped Hinky, and I walked her through casting a spell. It was nice. Hold it! I called out, coming around the corner as Savkanara walked home after class. Oh, it's you. Okay, what do you want? You know what I want. Let's make a deal. Not a chance. This isn't a spell for kids, and Marika will murder me. You know I'm reliable. Tell me what spell they showed you. Not a chance. It's Mana Bolt. I'm not giving a 3-year-old a combat spell. I'm not 3. I denied and was just irritated because denying how young you are always made you sound young. Yeah, whatever. Besides, the book is part of the class. You'll learn it, and I have to turn it back in to Marika later. Sorry, nerd. Jerk! I hissed at her and watched her saunter off. Whatever. It was probably a stupid lame spell anyways. I walked home, definitely not pouting the whole way, and flopped onto the sitting chair downstairs. What's wrong? I was startled by the voice and looked up to see Papa. You're out here? I'm out here. He agreed, sipping on something that might be tea, or it might just be warm water, depending on how distracted my father was at the time. Did you finish your order? Oh yes, all finished up. I sent it out by courier this morning. An interesting order, an illusion spell integrated into a hair clip. Fascinating idea, needing to adjust depending on the dress of the wearer. I just smiled and settled in besides Papa as he started chattering about his project now that it was finished. Oh well. Savkanara's stupid Mana Bolt spell wasn't needed. It was probably lame anyways. I seethed a bit as I watched Savkanara practice her awesome Mana Bolt spell in the area outside the school. While the rest of us kids were still practicing Mage Light, she was literally throwing around blasts of awesome mana and power. I wasn't jealous or anything, just because I was glaring at her like I could light Savkanara's stupid robe on fire, had nothing to do with her refusing to help me reach new arcane powers. Dora! Yes, Kimmy? I asked, never stopping my glare, finding out if I had laser eyes or something would be useful. You're not being very fun, Dora, Kimmy finally said, and I looked away. No laser eyes, to see my friend pouting at me. The mage light in her hand was still a stable color, instead of being able to change it like I already could. Sorry. Are you still struggling? No, I just want to know how to make it pink. I nodded, and finally tore myself away from my not jealousy and focused on my friend and practicing my new spell. Okay, so Mage Light is mostly visualization, but the spell does have part of the spell system that you need to alter to get Dora! I blinked at Kimmy S. pouty, almost teary-eyed look. Right, she was young. Okay, so when you cast the spell, twist the mana. Here, let me show you, I said, pulling in her hand and casting the spell with her palm on mine, causing a pink light to appear above her hand. I felt that. Yeah, we're mana sensitive, so just copy what I did. Right, I can do that. She puffed up like she was about to poop. At least that's what it looked like. And then I felt her mana flow out. The mage light popped into existence, but it wasn't quite pink. Almost. Try one more time, I assured her, instantly so she couldn't get pouty about her failure. Feel my mana. I reminded her and cast it again, before extinguishing it. And then Kimmy nodded and slowly she pushed the mana up. It felt wavy, like she was struggling to control the mana flowing through her. Then it popped up, and the light was pink-ish. I did it! Kimmy screamed excited, and I relaxed as long as she was happy. She'd get better at it as she practiced anyways. You did! I cheered, and then I was tackle-hugged as my friend cheered at her success. I just smiled. Kimmy was always excitable, and I was happy for her. Now, of course, there was my own practice. Mage light LV divi, Astoni sleeps vitra, divdesmit. I'd leveled the spell up. It barely took any mana after all. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to keep working on it. It felt like a waste of mana. But then I looked around and Marika would definitely not be happy if she caught me casting other spells. So as Kimmy started playing with her pink-ish light, I started rapid-fire casting the spell. Open palm, light on. Close palm, light off. Over and over. The amount of mana needed was minuscule. So as Kimmy distracted herself, and I had nothing else to do, I simply kept casting the spell, letting the numbers go up, as I kept focused. Honestly, it was at least night to have the numbers racing up so quickly. Some skills took forever to get anywhere. Holy Light was still level 3, and I wasn't able to gather enough mana to cast it still. Frustrating. How was I supposed to be strong enough to crush armies of bad guys if I couldn't cast a basic healing spell? Level 3. Mage Light. Made the light brighter. Level 4. Made it float higher, illuminating a larger area. I kept going. The mana difference was increasing, but compared to even a level 2 Holy Light, it was laughable. I was rapid-firing the spell, the levels shooting up when suddenly a hand clamped on my shoulder. Eee! I startled in surprise, looking up to see Marika. Dora, stop for me, okay? She asked gently, and I blinked, looking around. Everyone was looking at me, and at the very large mage light above me that was bathing the entire forest in a crimson light. Sorry. Don't be sorry. I'm happy to see you so excited to learn and to practice, and to get so good with a spell so quickly. But you are scaring everyone. I just nodded, and Marika's eyes crinkled up. Good job, Dora. Thanks. She patted me on the head and then went back to settling everyone else. Some of them were even pouting at me as they looked at their own far less impressive mage light. Oops. That afternoon I got home, processed my enchanting dust, and made another stack of whisper bands which got thrown into a tub with the rest of them for now. I was still needing to find a better enchantment, and while I should have asked Papa about it yesterday, I was more happy just to spend time with him since he finished his project. Today, though, I flopped onto the back porch and just cast Mage Light. It was nice to be able to so quickly level up something, and who knows, I might need a really, really bright light someday. So while it was so hard to level up my other spells, why not waste some time grinding this one? Light on, light off. Over and over. I was happy Mama wasn't home because she'd definitely have told me to quiet it, but Papa was distracted and I had the afternoon to practice. Level 8. Level 9. The spell actually started getting a little draining now. I had to stop and head inside and grab some lemon water that we had prepared and took a cup. I wish I could just take the whole jug, or better yet, make lots of it myself. But Mama would get upset if I drank all the special tasty water. Again. I'd promised not to just drink all the water in the house. So there. But a glass was of course acceptable, and the lemon water let me restore my mana super quickly. I could take a sip or two, and with a minute or so have my mana back. So I kept on the grind, humming a happy song as I kicked my feet and looked out over our pretty backyard while I restored mana and then cast a bunch again. And then it hit level 10. I felt a jolt and shivered a bit as I felt something flow through me. Mage Light mastered. Mage Light mastery, +5, intellect. I blinked, looking up in the twirling crimson sphere that lit up the entire backyard red, and then back at the update. Oh my! You got bonuses from hitting level 10 with spells. Chapter 5. Learning about spell mastery changed things up. Did all spells master at level 10? Were they like professions if they were complex spells? So I'd get some apprentice boosts like I did for enchanting? I didn't know, but I knew what I was going to find out. With an extra 5 intellect, I had a big boost to my mana pool. Suddenly, all those spells I couldn't cast, or could only cast once before a long wait, wasn't so difficult. Of course, instead of immediately starting to rush to level up Holy Light, or conjure refreshment, I was up in my room with one of my notebooks. Even if I level up Holy Light, I'll still get stuck on the next level again, or the one after. So, what I really need was more spells. I whispered to myself, looking at the numbers on the spells I'd written down in my spellbook. Holy Light level 3 was something I could cast now, but would level 4? Probably not. Even doubling my intellect, each spell level increased a lot for Holy Light. Unlike Mage Light, it was actually a complex combat spell, so to speak. So, I needed minor spells, as many of them as I could get. I stalled out for a second as I remembered a certain elf wizard and couldn't help but laugh to myself. As much as I'd like to focus on my goal in the future, I'd forgotten that it was the adventure that led to the goal that was the most important. I flipped over a page in my notebook and stalled. How do I learn new spells? I couldn't just go to the library. Spellbooks weren't handed out to elflings. I couldn't just go out to random caves. There weren't mimics just hanging out in dark caves ready to hand out spell tomes. No, if I wanted to learn spells, there was only one source: adults. Asking wouldn't work. Well, maybe, but not really. I'd probably get a few that way. But what I really needed was a transaction. Could I do that? It would probably be a little embarrassing. But I'm 6. Who cares if it's embarrassing? I had a goal. I looked around my room. Yep, I could use that. And I had that paint. Perfect. I kept my chin up as the elves of the village walked past, most of them either hiding smirks or giggling if they weren't as stuck up. But I was firm in my resolve. Alah'Dorah, what is this? The question wasn't the first time I'd heard this, so I looked over at Hestara, the priest-watchman of the village, and pointed at the sign that I'd painted. Adventuring services, I explained simply, and the man looked from the sign to me, in my adventuring gear. and I could see his lips twitch, fighting off the smile. Yes, I was cute. I knew this. I see. And what sort of adventuring services do you offer? He asked, fighting off the laughter. I ignored the amusement, just like I ignored the mockery I would take for this. But sometimes when you're a kid, you open a lemonade stand, and sometimes you start an adventuring guild. Anything, really. I'll find herbs, mow lawns, clean stables, wash or clean. Fight monsters, deliver goods. Whatever someone needs done is what an adventurer does. I see, he said as he kneeled down to be on my level, and I stuck my chin up higher because I wasn't embarrassed. And it says here, you take payment in spells? That's right. An adventurer needs to be a well-rounded elf, so I'll complete any task. But in exchange, I have to be given a spell I don't know in payment. Any spell? Any spell. No matter how useless or silly. As long as I don't know it, I'll accept the job. I said, determined. I'd probably be doing a lot of cleaning out the stables, I know. No one wanted to do it after all. But I could. And if I could get a spell out of it, then a few hours doing a gross task was worth it. Hestara grinned a little as he processed what I said, and I could still see him fighting off his amusement. All right, I have a task I could offer a little adventurer. Please register your task here, and we will discuss payment, I offered, pulling out a sheet of paper and a quill to offer to him, and that broke him. He had to look away, as his shoulders shook for a while before he seemed to get control of himself. I need a trustworthy adventurer to collect some flowers for me. Please add in the amount, and what kind. I'm sure you can get. Unclear instructions lead to unhappy results. I interrupted him, pushing the paper across the little plank of wood I'd made into a desk. Please register everything clearly and we can discuss payment. He looked at the paper, his shoulders shaking a bit in laughter, as he leaned over to do just that. I nodded. He was definitely wanting to pick flowers for Marika. Fair enough. You want the sunflowers instead of these. Marika likes them. I told him, pointing, and he stilled for a second, looking me in the eye, which I sent him a blank look in turn, before he crossed out the 7 peonies and wrote in sunflowers. Very well, this is an easy difficulty task, so the payment is only in minor cantrips. What spells do you have to offer? Ah, Mage Light? Already learned. I denied instantly. How about a spell that points you towards the sun well? Pretty useful for an adventurer, don't you think? Yes, I said happily, and wrote that part in myself. Please sign here, I demanded, and he, still laughing, did just that. Contract accepted. Please have the spell prepared or the time needed to teach it when I complete the task. Then I folded up the contract paper and stuffed it into a box, and walked over to the sign and flipped it over. On the other side of the wood sign I'd painted out. On an adventure. And then I grabbed my back and started jogging off to the forest. I pointedly ignored the giggles from not just Hesitera, but the other elves that had been watching what was going on as well. It's fine. Once I became a normal thing, I'd get plenty of requests. Everyone wanted someone else to do tasks for them on the cheap. Little kids had taken advantage of this forever. Now time to pick some flowers and put them into a cute bouquet for Marika. I returned to town not 30 minutes later, a bouquet of flowers in my hand as I hunted down Hesitara. I even used some string to wrap the flowers so it looked more official, and not just a bundle of picked flowers. Nice job, Dora. Going above and beyond. Eventually, I found him at his watchtower, and his face shifted into a delighted smile as I approached. Quest complete, I assured him, and then pulled out the contract. Please sign for completion. He just burst into laughter at my request, and soon enough I had a piece of paper with a compass spell on it and a signed quest contract. I left him to his laughter and hurried back home. While I could immediately start grinding the spell, it was still early in the afternoon, and I had time to collect at least another spell before it was time to go inside for the day. The sun was going down, but I had to finish my task. Another shovel of dragonhawk poop was scooped up and dumped into a small cart, which thankfully was animated. It followed me around and would go dump the poop. I'm impressed. I looked up as I wanted to wipe my forehead, but didn't want to cause I was messy. Why? You're so little. When I was your age, they couldn't get me to do classwork, much less spend an hour scooping out the stable for old Kitsy. The elf woman smiled at me, and I just shrugged. I took the job, so I have to complete it. That's so cute. Sharina was an ex-ranger, but retired here. She mostly baked and sold that sort of thing, but she still had her old dragonhawk companion that was a lazy old bird. I'm almost done, I assured her, and she waved me off. Nah, you're done. You've done enough. Why don't you come in and wash up? I don't want your mother to bite my ear off for sending you home in this state. I have the timer spell written out, and an extra reward for doing so well, she assured me, and I perked up. Quickly putting the shovel back in its spot, I raced after her, spending a bit of time washing up, and left Sharina's bakery with a loaf of her sweet bread and a paper with an explanation for her timer spell. She used it to make sure her baking was perfect. With that, I raced home, noticing with a bit of awkwardness that my adventuring stall had been looked through. Uh-oh. I opened the front door and heard some shuffling in the kitchen. I'm home, I called out as I poked my head around. Mama was home and she was giving me a look. Welcome home, she said a bit flatly as she looked me over. So I walked over and presented myself to her, standing up straight, shoulders back. What's that? An extra reward from Sharina for completing my adventure, I told her, holding up the bread for her to inspect. The paper wrapping pulled away and Mama nodded before setting it aside, and I remained in position. She threw me a salute, which I returned, and that made her return with some warmth as she leaned down and scooped me up in a hug. She held me tight for a bit before whispering, I want you to explain the sign and everything outside. Okay, I whispered back, and she nodded, setting me into a chair. Let me get something to drink, and you can have some of that bread while you tell me. I know how much you love it. Sharina was very nice. It wasn't even part of the reward for the quest. I gushed a little, quite pleased at the extras. Oh? Okay, so this is the contract, I said, pulling out the little box from my bag that kept the contracts safe and putting both of them on the table. Mama looked them over as she handed me a glass of milk to enjoy with the bread. Her eyes looked over both of them, and then I watched her put things together. If you wanted to learn more spells, I could teach you. I know, I said confidently. Mama knew a few extra spells. She had one that warmed water that was apparently a ranger spell, good for when they were on patrol and didn't have time for a fire to heat tea and stuff. So why do this? Didn't Marika just teach you a new spell? Mage Light. Yep. I learned it and it was great, which is why I want to learn more spells too. But why this? 'Cause trading people for spells is a good way to learn lots of them. Mama sighed, rubbing at her face. You haven't done something bad, my light, my little ranger. I know you're headstrong, that you like to take things into your own hands, but you've definitely made things interesting, she finally said with a sort of sigh. She looked upset, but not sure how to say it. What's wrong? I just opened up a little adventuring guild. I thought it'd be okay. Did something happen? Like I said, my light, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just, you've caused quite a few rumors. Some people still think this. We are in the middle of the city and cause trouble. Sorry. Don't be, she said, shaking her head. But I want you to explain what you're doing, so I understand it. Okay. I just go on adventures for people and the payment for them is spells. I want to learn all the spells. Every single one. I got 2 new spells just today. I explained, showing the 2 pieces of paper that had spell instructions listed out. So I do a task, and it goes into my quest book, and a reward is determined first, and then after I get the reward, which is spells, and everyone is happy. Just spells? Yeah? What else would I ask for? Money, usually my light. Mama said, chuckling, and I just shrugged. I don't need money? If I need some, I'll just sell some of the big sunflowers I've grown. Those sell really well. I've even had Kania asking if I had any more. Mama snorted, smiling a bit brighter. That's true. Okay, so you're just getting spells? Yep. Okay. Then, I don't mind if you keep doing it, but make sure you tell your father or I where you are going if you have to go out of the village, or if it'll take a long time. I promise. I'll leave a note or something. Good. All right. Now, how about sharing that sweetbread? Heh heh. I happily split a chunk off, and Mama and I started chowing down as I asked her about her day. All the while, I was considering what kind of rumor my adventure guild had started. Were people being mean? Saying weird things? In the end, I decided I didn't care. Not to myself anyways, but they better not be mean to Mama and Papa. I'll crush them if they are. That night, I set to work. A nice cup of lemon water, and I sat cross-legged in bed and started practicing my 2 new spells. Compass and Timer. Both simple cantrips, but that made them all the better. If I could get them to level 10, that'd be another stat boost. Or something. Compass was actually pretty easy. The sunwell was connected to all high elves in a way, making a visual bit of light that would point in the direction was simple. Both spells were, honestly. I practiced Compass and within a minute got it, as it really was that simple. Spell learned, Sunwell Compass. Sunwell Compass 1/10. I was satisfied with that. The rush of knowledge of exactly how to twist my mana to get the result was a relief. It went from needing to control every twist in the spell to knowing how to do it instinctively. I loved learning spells. It made casting them so much easier. Then I put that piece of paper to the side. Maybe I'd make a grimoire with all of the spells I learn in it eventually. But for now, I took the next one. Timer. Another mostly simple spell, but while pointing to the sunwell was easy, especially for a high elf, our connection to the font of our mana already there, Timer was a bit more complicated. The spell structure needed a sort of complex overlay to make it display the information I needed, and then it had to be smart enough to slowly time down. Then, when it finished, the spell popped, letting the user know it was complete. Literally an egg timer in spell form. I loved it, and so started working my mana through the complex swirls and patterns that were needed to make the spell smart enough to work. It might be a fairly complex spell for an elfling. Without my previous experience, I probably wouldn't have been able to stay focused on it enough to get it working, and then again, to actually finish it once. But I knew no matter how difficult, if I could do it once, I'd learn the spell, and that would be enough. Hands held up in front of my face, mana shifted and turned between my hands as I controlled such an incredibly powerful force. And then it all coalesced. Spell learned Timer. Timer 1/10. I did it, I whispered happily, staring at the timer already counting down from 10. When it finally hit 0, there was a moment where the spell itself dissipated and I laughed, as the noise sounded like a little bell. That was cute. I wonder how Sharina had gotten the bell sound as the spell collapsed. Either way. Achievement Ghetto. 2 new spells. Now time to really grind this out. Both spells were tiny mana uses. Timer used a bit more, but both weren't much more complicated than Mage Light. So I settled in and started casting Timer. They popped up nearly instantly, and I hit my first level up for the spell before the first timer ran out. And then the bell sound happened. And then again. I was still casting, but slowly stopped as I realized a problem. Ding, ding, ding. Over and over. I looked warily at the door. I knew it was coming. I could sense it. The door opened and Mama poked her head inside, and I winced as the bells kept coming. Alah'Dorah, what ding? You doing? And ding, thing, just some ding. Spell practice. I winced at her look, as the dinging kept going for another few times before all the timers ended. Dora. Yes, Mama. Go to sleep. Yes, Mama. I slipped into the bed, pouting a bit, but I could sacrifice an early night despite having the new spells I wanted to continue, to not get grounded. Ding! 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 I sighed as finally the last alarm happened and I looked at my stat sheet. Timer level 995 out of 100. The extra intellect was a lifesaver. Timer had some interesting functions as it leveled up, but for the most part it was louder ring or longer countdown. I was pretty sure I could set a timer for years at this point, and the spell would stick around the entire time even without attention, which was impressive. But in exchange, that spell was getting more mana hungry. I sipped at the water beside me and settled in to just let myself absorb mana for a while. I needed to get back to the Adventurer Guild stand soon, but after school, all I really wanted to do was get this spell sorted out. So I was behind the house grinding it out as best I could. And finally, it was almost time. I nodded. Filled with enough mana, I started casting. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, 5. Timer mastered. Timer mastery. +5. Intellect. It was the same. I'd gotten more intellect, more mana, more. Eee! I cheered, unable to remain sitting. I bounced to my feet and cartwheeled right through the timers still floating in front of me, laughing in delight as I felt so amazing. More mana. I was right. I could level up more spells now. I forcefully calmed myself down from the zoomies, despite wanting to run and jump and leap and cheer through the forest. I was an adventurer. I had to be calm. As much as I wanted to just grind out the Sunwell Compass spell, I should get back to work. There would be time to grind spells tonight when my mana had restored itself, since I was already pretty low anyways. I ran off to head inside. Time to get some more quests. Chapter 6. I accept your quest, I agreed happily, reaching out and shaking on the deal. All right, but I expect a thorough weeding. The entire yard, Ms. Calitor. I agreed. Then it was a quick flip of the sign, secure the quest contract, and gathering my equipment. Sword and board would do me no good here. Time for the rogue equipment. I gathered up a trowel, which was my dagger, and a pair of work gloves and set off for the yard. I was super excited. It had been a while since someone had offered me an actual spell. After the first splurge of minor spells, no one really had little spells to trade anymore, so I'd been stuck trading or bartering for my Adventure Guild services. Honestly, I'd considered stopping, but every once in a while someone would reveal some spell they had hidden as a family cantrip, or have gone into the Silver Moon and picked one up for something. No one had yet just picked up some spellbook or something and started parsing out the spells one by one to get me to do chores. So I was lucky, and unlucky there. Either way, I'd learned a bunch of random spells, most of them only causing my parents some minor hijinks. Not that Mama or Papa were complaining about the banish dust spell anymore. Sure, it had been a surprise to all of us. The dust was merely moved to a small enclosed space nearby, so poor Mama opening her flask had led to a poor result. But I learned from that. As I reached the yard, I nodded. Ms. Calitor was a total slob. No wonder she'd come for an adventurer's touch. I pulled out my dagger and got to work thrusting deep into the weak point of my enemy and pulling the vile monster out in one motion. Now only 1,000 more, and this quest would be complete. Still not the worst WOW kill a certain number of enemy quests I've ever done. To think it had been a fun few years since I started the Adventurer Guild. Time passed by in idyllic peace. Not much changed. I grew bigger. But for the most part, nothing really changed. I went to school. Learned the basic elf stuff, listened to Papa, did enchanting stuff, and did some training. I was still just a kid, so most of that got interrupted with just living my life. Kimmy often pulled me away from training for silly elfling games, but it was nice to just be a kid running around playing tag or kicking a ball around. Mama had started taking me out of the house to go camping. Not that the Eversong wasn't the most calm forest ever designed, 'cause it was designed. She'd even taught me some hunting stuff which had given me a few levels to my stealth skill, but not an actual level up. Glancing at my character sheet, I took in the changes over the last few years. Alah'Dorah, High Elf, Level 1, Strength 10, Agility 11, Stamina 13 plus 1, Intellect 8 plus 30, Spirit 9 plus 6, Skills known, Swords Level 2 8/20, Shields Level 2 9/20, Stealth 6 out of 10, Spells known, Holy Light Level 6 160, Conjure, Refreshment Level 864/80, Glyph Creation LV 537 out of 50, Mage Light LV 10 Spell Mastered, Mastery Benefit plus 5 Intellect, Sunwell Compass LV 10 Spell Mastered plus 5 Spirit, Timer Level 10 Spell Mastered, Mastery Benefit plus 5 Intellect, Float Object Level 10 Spell Mastered, Mastery Benefit plus 5 Intellect, Hairstyling Level 10 Spell Mastered, Mastery Benefit plus 5 Intellect, Polishing Spell Level 10 Spell Mastered, Mastery Benefit plus 5 Intellect, Banish Dust Spell Level 10 Spell Mastered, Mastery Benefit plus 5 Intellect, Lock Spell Level 6 160, Unlock Spell 510 out of 50, Profession Known, Enchanting Level 12 1 over 120, Apprentice, Apprentice Enchanting, Reduce Cost of Enchanting, Tailoring Level 9 1/90. I'd earned a lot of intellect mastering some of the minor cantrips I'd earned, and that had let me level even more of my spells. Holy Light was still an exponential bitch, though. Ha ha! I pulled out a particularly difficult weed proudly. None could stand against the anti-weed rogue. Backstab, backstab, backstab! I whispered to myself as I cut down my foe one after another. Dora! I perked up at the shout and stood up, wiping some dirt off my knees as I looked over the fence. Kimmy! I called out, waving, and my friend's eyes lit up as she saw me and bounded over. Dora, there you are. I didn't see you at the guild. Wanna play? I'm on an important quest, I called out, thrusting my dagger into the air. You'll have to give me a bit. Oh, Kimmy slumped, pouting at me. You're always on quests. Only sometimes. Fine. Are you going to be done in time for the Magister? I huffed, unimpressed. A Magister was coming through looking for mage potentials. If I was an idiot, I'd be excited wanting to become a mage in Silvermoon. But I wasn't. Any potential taken by this Magister wouldn't be taught to become some noble Magister. They'd be an apprentice, which basically just meant servant, using their magic to serve their master for centuries. Papa had explained it to me once in his blunt, honest assessment. Don't trust random magisters, Kimmy. They aren't good. Magisters are important, Dora. All right, I'm gonna go play. Finish up soon, okay? Yeah. I waved goodbye and focused once more on my quest. Ha ha ha! Another foe slain! Finishing up the quest took some time, and by the time I was done, I was sweaty and a bit dirty, but thankfully, my hair was still perfect. The hair styling spell acted like a barrier around my hair, meaning it was always perfectly coiffed, even when I was running around as an adventurer. Frankly, it was a really good deal for the afternoons spent earning it. A quick banish dust spell on myself, and the dirt that I had gotten coated with was cleaned away, and I was ready. Returning to Kalitor, I confirmed the quest completion, and off I went with a piece of paper with the spell I'd earned. Grinning happily, as I was going to spend the rest of the afternoon grinding. There you are. Come on. A hand slapped on my shoulder and I grinned up at Mama as she had appeared beside me. Sneaky. I'm a ranger, she reminded me, and all I could do was grin as she led me off towards the town square, which made my happy smile at Mama being back in town shift into a frown. We aren't going to try and give me to some dumb magister, right? I asked, almost surprised we were heading over there. Mama kept me far away from magisters and their ilk. The dream of many young elves was to become a magister. They were the heroes and politicians, and the rich and powerful all wrapped in one. But not me. I knew politicians were evil, and elf politicians were worse than the norm. No, of course not, but we still have to show up. Don't worry if he shows any interest in you. I'll make him change his mind. Oh, I can do that. I'll tell him he's stupid looking, and he should probable. A hand was slapped on my mouth. That is very funny, but let me handle it. K. Most of the town was gathered, and we quickly found a spot as a red-robed elf stood in the center of the town. I noticed he had a few guards, and they kept a wide circle from everyone and him, as if he was better than the rabble. A few of the elves of the town looked hopeful, but I doubt anyone would interest a magister. None of the children were great mages or anything. He was setting up a small examination area, no doubt checking mana levels and such. Papa could do that with half the equipment this guy was pulling out. I scoffed. He wasn't an enchanter at the least. What do you think? Will Alah'Dorah catch his eye? I heard above me and looked. It was Marika who had sidled up to Mama. No, she won't be going with any magister to Silvermoon, not at her age. She's the right age for an apprenticeship. She's exceptionally talented. And they would ruin her, Mama hissed back, and Marika raised her hands in apology. It wasn't the first time I'd heard that question. While my guild had caused some problems at first, apparently a few people had taken it as a chance to call Mama and Papa poor, needing to make their daughter work. That had been the main theme, but in the end, I was making friends. People liked the guild service, and more importantly, I was learning spells. If there was one thing that was respected in our society, it was the capability of magic, enchanting, spells. I was becoming well known for them both, which was very unusual for such a young elfling. In the end, I didn't go through the magister's tests, and of the few kids that did, none were selected. Snootily, he packed up and disappeared. Come on, Dora, we're going camping, Mama said afterwards, still irritated at some of the adults asking her if I would test. My future wasn't in Silvermoon. I knew that, and my parents thankfully agreed. The idea of me being a magister was ludicrous. Mama, I asked curiously. She'd been acting strange for the entire camping trip, which was really just the two of us walking out into the wilderness. Between my fairly high stamina for a kid and holy light, I didn't even really get tired, so I was able to keep up on the long hike through the Eversong. We were on day 2 of our trip. Having walked to the east far enough, I could smell the ocean. The peaceful woods had turned into peaceful mountains. It's time for your real training to begin, Mama said, and I blinked. Real training? What was I doing up until now that wasn't real? I was actually a little offended, but then Mama pulled something out of her bag and I understood. A bow and quiver? Yes. You are old enough to properly practice. Like the ranger training of old, we are out here roughing it while you learn. Mama said proudly, and I realized I'd heard this story before. How her father had taken her out into the country when she was about my age and handed her a bow and made her hunt for her meals. I pouted, but just sighed, letting out all the pieces of me that didn't want to do this, and sucked in air of a girl ready to accept any challenge. I'm Alah'Dorah, and there is no quest, no challenge on Azeroth I won't face. I told her, finger pointing, and she smiled brightly as I played along. We'll see if you keep that feeling when you go hungry tonight. She handed the bow to me, and I took the quiver, sliding it over my shoulder like she did, and tightened it to make sure it wouldn't move. But don't worry, this afternoon we'll start with some lessons. You will be able to shoot at least before I send you off. Okay, Mama, I grumbled. Besides, it wasn't like I would actually go hungry. I could always make muffins. I shuddered at the idea of eating those things. Okay, what do I do? I asked, because frankly, I wasn't an archer and had no real interest in it. I wanted to be a paladin, or a knight at least. Heavy armor, and sword, and board. See that? She pointed, and I noticed something that made me still. In the clearing we had stopped in that Mama had been acting so strangely as she looked around, I realized what it was. This is where your father took you. Yes, this is where every member of our family is taken to learn archery. I was brought here. My father was brought here, and his mother. She said, and I looked around, actually looking. That stump had been chopped by an elf, and more importantly, it had been slightly smoothed to act as a seat. There was even a pit there, that the grass had overrun, that no doubt was where the older member would wait. The hanging target Mama had pointed out to me was covered in stains, and moss, and hundreds of small nicks from arrows. Okay, that was kinda cool. So first, I'll guide you through to practice, then I'll set up camp, and then you use what you've learned to go hunting. No catch, no food. I have muffins. You can eat them if you want, Mama said flatly, and I shook my head. Nah, I'd rather starve. First, hold the bow like this, strong wrist, but flexible. You are going to control everything from here. She started, and I listened. Unlike with sword or shield, I hadn't actually been instructed with a weapon yet. So I was kinda curious, yet nothing popped up as she guided me, and soon it was time to actually fire. I breathed in, drew my shot, and loosed. Phew. The arrow streak. No, it more lazily went wild and ended up nowhere near the target. Pfft. Don't laugh. Sorry, it's just... I have no idea how you did that. That's fun, right? Just try again, Mama said, desperately holding back laughter. I pouted but drew another arrow, knocked it slowly, breathed in, drew back, and... Phew. Once again, the arrow sort of wobbled and went spiraling off. I could feel the tips of my ears heating up in embarrassment. Just try it again. You'll get it, Mama assured me. I hadn't actually gotten the skill yet, which was not good. Okay, just shoot the bow. I'm sure if I hit the target, that would count as a success, and I'd get the skill, right? Phew. Oh, come on! I screamed, another quiver empty. Just load up and try again. You'll snark. You'll get it. Thunk. Finally, yes! I screamed, probably scaring any of the game away for miles, but I'd finally gotten an arrow into the target. Weapon skill. Learned bows. I exhaled in relief. A dozen weird little bits flowed into me. I'd been shifting my fingers wrong. Dang it. Hey, you got one. Good job. Mama called out from the crackling fire she'd set up in the time it had taken me. I'll get the next one too, I grumbled. She'd been super supportive, but it was so embarrassing to be so bad. This is why I used swords. Bows were dumb. I grabbed another arrow, adjusted myself, brought the bow up, and the arrow missed the target, thumping into the tree next to it. Hey, that's a big improvement. Merble? I was hungry, but I'd leveled up the stupid bow. Mama had, without even saying anything, passed me some food when I finally called it enough training, as the sun had long gone down. I thought I had to hunt my own? You do. We're told we have to find food on the first day to make sure we take the training seriously. You can't expect to hike here, train, and hunt something in a single day. Eat up, it's your last guaranteed meal for a while, Mama said firmly, and I nodded. So, bow 6 out of 10. Not exactly great, but I was reliably hitting. Mostly the target now. I looked at the bow itself. It was a simple thing, made for a child my size. Inlaid into the wood was a simple word. Salama. I whispered the word. Justice. All rangers have to remember why we do this. Justice, peace. We are the guardians of our home Alah'Dorah, taking up our weapons to protect what has been created. Many scoff at our duties, but when danger comes, they all beg for us. We are justice against the evils that would come to our lands. I'll remember, I whispered. It was an old carving. Was this yours? It was. Father made it for me for my training. I had to send a letter to ask for it. Thankfully, it has no value outside of the memories it holds. So my sister sent it. I blinked. Sister? Mama said nothing, added nothing. I knew Papa had left Silvermoon because of his reputation, that his family has basically disowned him because of it. I hadn't known Mama had family troubles. She'd never spoken of them. At all. I almost asked, but felt it was probably not right. So instead, I did the only thing I was sure of. Thank you, I'll treasure it. Don't do that, use it. It's a tool, Mama demanded, but she smiled happily at my words anyways. Either way, I finished my meal and settled in for a quiet night. Hopefully, I would sleep well. I had a long day ahead of me. Now, watch the grass, Mama whispered into my ear. Despite being larger, she moved so quietly behind me. It had only been my own actions that had scared away the game. Mama was literally stalking alongside me, slowly guiding me on my first hunts. I'd tried twice so far. Both times the animals I'd stalked had noticed and took off. At least it was good training. Stealth 9 out of 10. A rabbit this time. And this time I would make the shot. I continued moving ahead, watching the grass just like she had said, so I wouldn't ruffle it and alert the prey. Slowly creeping forward, my muscles tense and loose all at the same time. I had it this time. I knew it. The rabbit shifted, and I stilled, motionless, my outline blurred mostly thanks to Mama's cloak that she had right behind me. It broke up our outlines, making us just a blob in the grass, and the rabbit eventually hopped a few more times, eating more grass. I waited a little longer, finding the time as it looked away, ear twitching, and I took another few steps. This was it. I adjusted myself, making sure I wouldn't make a sound as I rose the bow up, arrow already knocked. I breathed in quietly and started to exhale when something donked me right on top of my head. I jerked and my arrow went wide. I stared in shock as the rabbit blitzed. What? I looked up, in the face of a squirrel that had just dropped an acorn on my head. 1,000 curses on your species! I yelled up at the little shit. As it darted away, I grabbed a rock and threw it. Stupid squirrel! Pfft. No. I whined as Mama was desperately trying to keep from breaking, but she couldn't hold it in. Pwahahaha! It's not that funny, I grumbled and reached up and rubbed at my head. Ow. Chapter 7. The forest was quiet, until with a twang it wasn't. The arrow whistled and the rabbit couldn't react before it was speared through. I held the bow out, finishing the motion of the shot before I relaxed. I did it. The words escaped me as I noticed a new noise in my head. 10 XP. I'd gained XP. I'd never seen that before. My stat sheet even showed something new. Level 1, 10 out of 100 XP. You did, Mama said proudly, dropping a hand over my shoulder and pulling me into a hug. Very nice shot. Thanks. We both walked up, staying quiet. Using the tricks Mama had taught me, I stalked through the forest. Well, I still made a ton of noise and wasn't perfect, but my efforts had been rewarded. With the rabbit dead, I gained level ups for some skills. Stealth level 2.520, bows level 2.520, stalking and shooting a bow. The stealth was cool, but I really didn't have much interest in bows. But still, this was a family tradition. So I learned. Could come in handy someday. I shouldered the bow as I reached the rabbit, and Mama knelt down, softly explaining what I had to do. Okay. Deep breath, and knife out. Skinning an animal was not something I was used to, but I could handle it. It was already dead. Not doing it would mean that I wasted its life. At least I got something from it. Profession learned skinning. So that was nice. I finished roasting the rabbit and pulled it off the fire. The stick I'd jammed through it was a bit messy, but this was a learning experience for me. Mama had told me how to do it, and then just left me to try. The first bite was... I pouted and Mama started laughing at me as I reached over and put it back on the fire. Yup. Gonna need to get a cooking skill at this rate. I don't think I was very good at it. Leave it on for a while longer. A campfire always takes longer than you'd think, Mama told me as she ate her own meal for the night. How long are we going to stay out here? I asked, and Mama sent me a look as she chewed on her own rabbit, which was much crispier looking than mine. Dang it, I should have just followed what she had done with the scoring lines. Said, does my little ranger not want to be out here with her mama? I didn't say that. It's fun. I denied, and it was. I wanted to go explore the world. While I had no interest in being a ranger, these were all skills I needed to have. Sure, I could make food and water, but knowing how to find it or hunt it was still an excellent backup skill. A while longer was all she said after taking another bite and chewing it slowly. So I just huffed at her. Whatever. I stared at my own food and grinned. Does that mean I can practice some spells? I asked, and Mama rolled her eyes. My spell habit had become a bit of a thing in the household. While both of my parents loved that I was so active in practicing something so important. Yes, you can, as long as it won't start a fire, or an explosion, or make a huge amount of noise, or... Nope, I countered, and reached into my bag. The piece of paper I had earned for weeding an entire yard. It was a secret spell known only to Miss Alah'Dorah. I suspected she had either made it herself or learned it in the capital. I read through the instructions to refresh myself. I'd checked them out when I first finished the quest, but hadn't had time to learn it since then. Hiking through the woods wasn't a good time to learn new spells after all. I grabbed my water skin, something Mama had made sure I had filled up all the time, and popped the top. Closing my eyes, I drew on the mana. Even so far from the sunwell, it was still flooding over the entire area. Then, as I waved my fingers, letting the mana flow a certain way, a twist, and a draw, and... the water spilled out over the floor. Was that supposed to happen? Mama asked curiously, but I noticed doing her best to not sound mean about it. Nope, I flubbed it. I'll try again. I offered, and did just that, getting back to work. A few more fumbles, and finally, with a twist, the water that pulled from the water skin flowed out, and suddenly shifted, changed, and then, with a soft little crack of ice, the water hardened. Instant ice cube, I declared, showing off the little circular ice cube. Then with a shrug, I pushed it into the wineskin. Isn't that, what's her name? Calator. Her. That's her spell. She uses it at her little bar. Yep, I completed a quest to finally get it. Took forever for me to wear her down. She didn't want to share. Mama's lips twitched. My little rogue, haggling down even the famous Calator. She replied, and I grinned at her until I noticed it. Oh no, my rabbit! I squeaked, reaching for it and pulling it from the fire and blowing it out as it had caught a bit of flame. Gotta watch that. You didn't warn me? Can't. You have to learn not to ignore cooking food or you don't eat. She replied gently, and I pouted as I looked at the very burnt rabbit. Oh well. Mama pointed and I nodded, a much harder target, but that was what she told me she expected from me. We'd spent 2 weeks out here now, and every day was training and hunting. The animals I was expected to hunt changed, although I could and should still hunt for food. After the first week, I was given targets. The first few I had managed without much trouble, but I knocked the arrow and drew it back. My bow skill had increased a lot over the last 2 weeks. Daily target practice and actually using it on animals, along with Mama offering me real instruction, had helped. But still, shooting small birds was hard. I let my instincts guide me, and released. The arrow cried out as it shot through the air and my target reacted, but I had aimed not for where it was, but where it would be. The puff of feathers as the arrow finally struck true had me breath out a sigh of relief. 10 XP. That was my 6th attempt. Mama's warm hand landed on my shoulder as she was suddenly beside me. You did it, she said simply, pride practically exuding from every pore. Birds are hard. They are, but important. Messenger birds are common among some races. Removing them and getting the message is a very important job of the rangers. Gotcha? I nodded, although I pouted at her, and she just grinned all the more. Mama often mentioned how I should become a ranger. No thanks. Make sure you get your target. Try to collect the feathers. I'll show you how to use them to fletch them to make arrows. She said happily, and I stalled out because, so far, I'd been using arrows she had made for me. You're going to make me make my own arrows now until they are good enough I can hunt with them, aren't you? My daughter is so cute and so smart, Mama crowed out happily, and I watched her walk towards the downed bird. No! Ah! I loosed, and the arrow, if you could call it that, went nearly sideways. I felt my face puff up as I just felt all the irritation. Aw, don't look so irritated, Mama said, kneeling down and cuddling up to me, rubbing her cheek to mine. It's okay, you are still learning. That took forever, and it doesn't shoot straight, I yelled, actually losing my temper a bit. I hadn't even earned an actual fletching skill or anything, so I was doing this freehand, and it sucked. I'd had to find a straight stick, carve it, and make both the fletching and the arrowhead. After all that work, and multiple straight-up failures, I thought that one was okay. The fletching was a little off, and you made the arrowhead unbalanced. It's okay. I'll show you. She assured me, rubbing my hair a little as I was obviously upset. I just breathed in, and then let out a ragged breath. I should just make magic arrows. It'd be easier. I grumbled, and Mama chuffed out a laugh. That would be useful. A few rangers can do it, but it's very difficult. Either way, you should still know how to make arrows, in case you ever need to. I know, I said with a sigh. I took a moment to close my eyes and look at my character sheet. Sometimes when shit was going bad, I just needed to remind myself what I had done and what I still needed to do. I'd gained an agility point with all the running around, putting me at 12, which was nice. My bows were at level 4, my highest combat skill. It was still tedious to train, especially for a skill I didn't really care about, but that was fine. Learning new things just meant more chances to raise stats, and max skills, and get more out of it. It was just super annoying to work on something only for it to fail. I was probably a little too trained towards being rewarded for my efforts instantly. I took a breath and let it out. Okay, let's do the next one. That's my girl. I breathed out and loosed. The arrow flew, mostly straight, and hit the archery target. Better, Mama said, and then I was scooped up, earning a startled yelp as she spun me around. You're so amazing! She cheered, and I just couldn't stop the delighted giggles as she swung me around. Mama! You are growing up so fast. Slow down for me, okay? Stay this small forever. But I can't go on adventures if I stay this small, I argued, and Mama just grinned and hugged me tighter. Arrows are hard, I finally admitted as she put me down, and she seemed utterly amused at my words. They are, but you are picking it up so fast. Yeah, well, I demurred as I looked at the mess of broken arrows that I'd been working on. It didn't feel like I was picking it up quickly, but with this last arrow, I had finally gotten the fletching profession. Profession learned, fletching. So at least this one was good enough to shoot, and I could start really improving from here. Well, you still have to do some hunting tonight? Want to try that arrow, or want to try and make an even better one? Mama asked, teasing me, and I groaned. I'll try to make a better one, I whispered. The arrow flew straightish, but not straight, and I didn't like my odds of missing my dinner if it flubbed. We were hunting something more dangerous this time, and Mama was very serious about the dangers. Boar. For once, she had an arrow in her hands in case something went wrong, but she was still following behind me, expecting me to handle it. I followed the tracks in the dirt. Boars at least were easy to track. They left a mess in their path, digging and ripping up the ground where they went. We stalked along, and I couldn't help but notice that my movement through the forest was quieter, my feet more sure. While I hadn't really been interested in the archery aspects of the little trip we'd done, I couldn't deny that it had paid dividends to some of my skills. The experience alone meant I was just that much closer to really going on an adventure and seeing the world. Shaking my head for a moment to get rid of the distracting thoughts, I focused on the goal. If we took out this pack of boars, then Mama said we'd go home after a feast. I very much liked both ideas. I wanted to go home and sleep in my bed and take a bath, and also, a bunch of food sounded awesome. My ears twitched. They often just got in the way, but they were good for some things. I stopped, then started again, moving even slower, carefully watching every step as I approached the sound of ruffling. Peering through some bushes, I saw my quarry, a small family of hogs. One big guy, a smaller female, and 3 smaller hogs. But they were all big to me. I glanced to Mama, and she nodded. This was my show. Rangers were often hired to clear out wildlife that was causing trouble. So she wanted to see if I could do this. This could be trouble, for one. I only had a child-sized bow, and these boars were pretty big. Could I put enough arrows into them to finish them faster than they would attack? I made to pull my arrow back. If I took out the big one first, that would be best, but then stopped. There was no chance I was going to be able to take out this many boars like this. I just wasn't that good with a bow, so why was I trying it? I had magic. I should use it. Reaching down, I picked up a rock. I felt Mama leaning in, wondering what I was doing, so I sent her a smile and a finger to my lips before I got started. Timer, 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 timer. That should do that. And now, just tie a few more spells to the same rock. Tying the timer to another spell was a bit tricky, but I had mastered both spell formula. Timer, light, timer, light, timer, light, timer, light, timer, light. Hold the rock very carefully, as something as mundane as a rock did not like having so many spells concentrated on it. I looked at Mama, who was watching me curiously. Cover your ears, Try not to look straight at it, I whispered to Mama as quietly as I could as I tossed the rock. As it was in the air, I pulled my bow back. Aim the biggest one. Fire. I wasn't sure if I hit where I wanted. I wasn't sure of much because about half a second later the entire clearing exploded in light and sound, but my eyes were shut. The noise of the timer exploded and the light went off, a strobing effect making the bright white light even worse. It flickered across my eyelids as I resisted looking. I kept my eyes closed and just did my best to ignore the noise as I grabbed another arrow, and only when the noise stopped did I open them. Bow raised. The boars were freaking out, dazed and confused. Some of them were on their side twitching. The arrow flew. The biggest boar was still up, but the arrow had definitely pissed him off. The second, and then third arrow struck true, and he slumped, unable to fight against that level of damage along with just how confusing everything had just been for him. The others fell in sequence, arrow after arrow going out, until I was out of arrows and they were hopefully either dead or dying. I waited, breathing heavily from the motion of firing so much, and things just went quiet for a time. The twang of another arrow startled me as Mama had stood up and fired, her arrow puncturing straight through the skull of the large female. It was still alive. Best to put it out of its misery. My daughter, my little light. I'm so proud of you, Mama said then, and to my surprise, she didn't hug me, or anything like that. She offered me a salute, the ranger salute, that we often gave to each other, which was mostly just me being cute. I returned it, and Mama broke into one of the proudest smiles I've ever seen on her face. Come, Alah'Dorah, let's clean your kills and prepare for a feast tonight, Mama demanded, and I followed at her heels. To my surprise, she didn't just make me do all the work, but instead, we worked together, cleaning the kills and skinning and butchering the boar family. While I felt into that, I couldn't help but keep glancing at my character sheet. Each boar had been worth 20 XP instead of 10 like normal animals. Level 2, 80, over 200 XP. Stats gained: Strength +1, Agility +1, Stamina +1, Intellect +1, Spirit +1, Strength 11, Agility 13, Stamina 4 Smith plus 20, Intellect 9 plus 30, Spirit 10 plus 6. My level up spread for stats was 1 for everything, and it wasn't even that much experience extra per level, at least for now. I hope that wasn't an exponential increase. If the next level took 400 XP, that would start to suck very quickly. I shook it off and focused on skinning and butchering. Gonna have lots of food tonight? I got used to the new rhythm of things. Wake up, prepare arrows, eat whatever I had left from the hunt the night before if possible. Do some target practice to warm up, and then wander into the woods with Mama shadowing me, although she had taken a different role as we went. See these? Deer? Mm-hmm. She agreed but didn't move on, so I looked again at the tracks. Something I was missing. Something I was missing. Dog. I mean wolf tracks. We aren't the only ones tracking something, yes. Wolves are needed but can be dangerous. We will let both of these go. She explained, and I nodded as we moved off the tracks. Right. Don't just kill every animal I come across. The ecosystem still needed to be kept stable. I glanced into the trees, eyes narrowed. You get to live this time, squirrel. It looked back at me, no doubt plotting my downfall. What a small creature, yet infinitely evil. Probably an agent of the Burning Legion. In the end, we bagged another rabbit, for each of us, and headed back to camp. A smile on my face as this honestly was pretty fun. It had been rough at first needing to learn all the new skills, but now that I could make an arrow that actually worked, could shoot a bow, could hunt and track, could skin and prepare, it wasn't so bad. The moment we settled into camp and started cooking, Mama spoke. We'll head back in the morning. What? Really? I thought we would be out here for even longer. You've already finished the training. You still have more to learn, but you always will. I'm proud of you, daughter. You are a ranger of the woods. Your training is complete. I blinked. Wait. What? Haven't figured it out? This is our family tradition for training. You passed. As of now, you have all the skills of a novice ranger. Congratulations, my daughter. I didn't expect you to succeed so quickly, Mama said, smiling like a proud mama. What? But I didn't want to be a ranger. I wanted to be a paladin, knight, mage. This was terrible. Chapter 8. Home! I cheered as I rushed the final way up the steps to push open the door and look around. Papa? The sound of Papa's curious noise made me smile, and I rushed forward. He was in his workshop looking around in confusion until he saw me, and then he broke into a smile. Dora. Papa. I cheerfully tackled him, hugging him tightly. I wonder who the favorite is? Mama asked as she also entered the room, and Papa sent her a happy look. Pfft. Don't be silly, I don't have a favorite, I said. Then sent Mama the smuggest look of all time as I brought up my hand to cover my mouth. It's you, and by a lot, I whispered to Papa. Oh, is that so? Papa said, sounding quite happy, but Mama's jaw slowly dropped, her ears twitching as she obviously heard me, and then she snarled. You little brat! Papa saw of me! I cried out, and Papa just laughed as he hugged me tight. And when Mama got close to my surprise, he pulled her into a hug as well. There was a surprised look on her face for a moment before she laughed as well and snuggled into Papa. I missed you, Papa said, and whether he meant me or Mama, neither of us cared that much. You should have seen her. She was terrible at first, worst archer I've ever seen. I grumbled as Mama told Papa about our trip, but she picked it up so fast. She was amazing. That's good, Papa said, smiling happily as we sat beside each other at the dining room table. Mama was making food, which was a relief, after weeks of grilled meat and whatever vegetables we could scrounge up. I need to work on my sword skills more. I told Papa, and he just gave me a wide-eyed look as he processed what I'd said. Is that so? I want to get a sword and shield. Bows are better, my dear. No, sword and shield. I told Mama, and she sent me another look like she thought I was being a cute kid. Grrr. I wasn't going to be some cringe stealth archer. Paladins lead from the front and help people. Stealth archers are just cringe. Did you have fun? Papa asked, and I stopped. Yeah, it was fun. I liked hunting, and learning how to skin animals was gross, but I did collect a bunch of pelts. And made me carry most of them. No! You said you would so I wouldn't slow down. It would have been good training. Don't lie to Papa. Train when you aren't marching home, Mama said, winking at me as she did. Which I could only nod at. Pelts? Yeah, I figured I'd make something out of them. Belts, maybe? So I could enchant them for more practice. Ah, well, if you want to practice, bracers would be easy. Right? Papa asked, looking at Mama, and she shrugged. It should be doable with a bit of stitching. I can already do arm enchantments with the whisper bands, so I figured belts, maybe a cape. Capes were cool. Whisper bands? Papa said, suddenly surprising me. Yeah? I pulled up my sleeve showing my current enchanted whisper band. It was just minor spirit, but it was still useful. Oh, that enchantment. That makes sense. No. Wait. Where did you learn this? Magistrix Eltella taught me. We ran across each other as I was exploring. She was working on her garden. I see, Papa whispered quietly, looking far away, which for him was saying something. Aaron? No, it's fine, Felamin. It's fine. Just didn't expect her to pay any attention to Dora. What's wrong? What did Tella say to you, Dora? Mama asked, and Papa sent her a look like he didn't want Mama to ask this. I just shrugged. I was exploring, and we got to talking a little. I told her I wanted to explore the whole world, and she thought that was cool. I mentioned I was looking for stuff to enchant, and she taught me how to make the whisper bands out of long grass. I see, Mama whispered, and I looked between them, eyes narrowing. Okay, what is going on? You are both being squirrely, and I hate squirrels. Pfft. Mama looked away, hiding a laugh, but I just kept my eyes narrowed at her. Do you trust me, Dora? Papa asked suddenly, and I instantly nodded. Course I did. Then trust us that it was just a surprise. Magistricks are difficult people. I'm happy it was a nice memory for you. So let's leave it at that for now, okay? Fine. But I can tell something is up. That's fine, Papa said, and I just deflated at that. No point arguing with Papa, he'd just focus on something else and ignore you. Food is ready, Mama said, breaking up the tension, and so we ate as a family instead. It was good to be home. Over the next week, I settled back into the rhythm of just being home. Although whenever Mama got back from her ranges, she'd stop and take me out back to practice archery and hunting skills. Thankfully, I never actually got worse at a skill, so Mama was pleased I was still practicing, which I kinda wasn't. But that's fine. I spent most of the time not at school or working at the Adventurers Guild tailoring. While whisper bands had very much stopped giving me XP, taking a rabbit fur and sewing it into different things had started giving me some levels again. My first rabbit cape was terrible, but that was fine. After talking to Papa, we'd worked out the best enchantment to go with, and despite his offer to do it, he'd instead taught me the enchantment, and after a few attempts, I got it. Cloak of Minor Agility, 'cause it's a rabbit cape, I told Mama when she got back and I showed it off. It's wonderful, Mama said, lying through her teeth as she resisted laughing at my mangled mess of a rabbit fur cape. I just scoffed at her. I know it looks terrible, Mama. It's more about practice than function. Besides, agility enchantment is very useful. Yes, that's true, she said, still trying not to laugh. So I huffed and flicked my barely there cape back over my shoulder and stalked off with all the confidence I could hold as Mama laughed the moment I turned the corner. Oh well, I'd disenchant it once I had a better one. For now, it was just another piece of adventure kit. Speaking of adventure kit, I really needed everything else. Looking myself over, I could only frown. Tough pants made for running around and getting dirty. Little boots. Top that was fairly tight, as was just sort of the style for high elves. I wasn't wearing the long sleeve jacket, but... I look like a mini ranger? I whispered to myself in horror. No! It was all light armor. I fell to my knees, hands against the floor. The horror. I need armor. Heavy armor. And chonky clicky boots that could be heard from a mile away just to wash away the potential someone might think I'm a stealth archer type. What are you doing? Having an existential crisis. I told Mama, looking up and sitting up normally. Well, are you okay? Oh yeah, I'll be fine, I chirped, throwing Mama a thumbs up. Okay, now I'm concerned. It'll be okay. I'm going to become a smith and make myself heavy armor, I told her, having come to the conclusion once I remembered I could just make armor. Ooh, okay? Yep, it'll be great. Do we have a pickaxe somewhere? No, my light, we don't have a pickaxe. Mama drawled out like she couldn't believe she just had to say that. Okay, I'll just have to buy one. I should be able to trade some enchanting powder. Do you think Meltonar will have one at the shop? I don't think I want you buying a pickaxe. What are you even thinking, Dora? I'm lost. I'm gonna get a pickaxe and learn how to mine for ores, then smelt them, and then smith them into armor. That way I can make cool armor, and know how to repair or make it in the field if I need to. That's... Mama just rubbed at her nose as if what I'd said was insane, instead of perfectly reasonable. Where are you even going to find ore to mine? I'll explore until I find it, I said, hands on my hips, and Mama sent me one of those, my daughter is being cute looks. But not really answering. I can do it. There aren't any mines around here, my light. You'll need to go on a much longer trip to find some, so... That's fine. I'll practice my hunting skills and I can even get more pelts while I travel each way. It's a perfect plan. You're too young. You just got done teaching me how to survive in the wilds, I pointed out. That's not the same thing. What if you get hurt? I can heal with magic. What if you get stuck somewhere? I can make lots of light and sound with magic, I argued, and Mama just crossed her arms. Alah'Dorah, I love you, and you did very well, but you aren't going out exploring or traveling on your own. You are too young. Ah, I slumped, but I wanted our more. Can we go on trips together? That's possible, but I have my ranges, and getting your father into the wilds is dangerous. Yeah, but I'll see what I can do, she offered, and I grinned and gave her a big hug. I do think that her sigh of relief was also hoping I'd give up on my blacksmithing dreams for clanky armor, but that just wasn't going to happen either. It's just on hold for now. It's a really nice cape, Dora, Kimi offered the next day. Some of the others had already made fun of me, but it wasn't like a bunch of grade schoolers could hurt my feelings. Thanks, Kimi. It's not very good, but I did enchant it. Want to see? Oh, really? Yeah, she offered wide-eyed, and I grinned as I took it off and handed it over, watching as she put it on, tied the little tie to keep it on, and then she blinked. Whoa, I feel weird. It's a cape of lesser agility, so you'll move a little quicker. That's awesome, she whispered, and I grinned right back. Magic cape. Magic cape. She agreed, and soon we were both running around, her chasing after me. And even with the cape, I was a bit faster than her, but she liked the game anyways. Can you enchant a cape for me, Dora? Sure, Kimi. I agreed as she was pouting about having to give the rabbit cape back. I was happy to make one for her, especially since she hadn't made fun of me. When I wasn't doing any of the other dozen tasks I took on in a day, I was still practicing my ice cube spell. Being able to push a few ice cubes into Papa's drink before handing it to him was really funny, as he wasn't usually expecting so much cold still in his drinks. But for the most part, I was gathering more enchanting reagents, working on what quest I'd get for the guild, and just spending my days doing whatever popped up like normal. Of course, just because I couldn't run off to find a mining spot to gather some ore didn't mean my idea had gone away. Good afternoon, Meltanar, I greeted, walking into the closest thing our village had to a grocery store. Meltanar had supplies brought in from all over, and you could even request things from him, which is why, as I entered, the man sighed. What can I do for you, kid? Well, I'm looking for information this time. I'm not an info broker, kid. I bring in groceries and random things from the capital mostly. I know, but that's why you're the one that can help. I'm looking for a book or manual on smithing. Smithing? We don't have a smith in town, but I want to learn. Kid, no smith is going to accept a long-distance apprentice. I know, but I can learn on my own, but some advice or things would help. Unfortunately, while I could start a skill, I still needed to be taught, or go through the process of learning things to actually do the complex stuff. I could sew, but my rabbit cape came out looking terrible because I'd never actually sewn a cape before. I was getting better, but still. That's not something I think I can help you with. Come on, Meltanar, at least try. I can sell you another of the sunflowers. You got another one? I'm growing them, and another is ready, yes. The expansion of my enchanting setup meant I now had multiple pots of sunflowers growing in the sunlight while gathering mana. He sighed, a bit looking down at me, from behind the little counter in his home. It wasn't even really a shop, just his home that he stored things in. So I can ask around if someone would be willing to put together a manual for an apprentice, but that's not something just anyone would be willing to do. It'll cost more than one flower. Even when you sell the flower in the capital? I teased. I'd of course heard the rumor of his gushing at how much money he'd made for the massive sunflower. Even then, yeah, I know you heard. Yes, it sold well. He grumbled at me, and I just grinned. It's important to me, Meltanar, please. I'll see what I can do, just don't expect much. And you'll have to pay for it. In flowers. I agreed and held out my hand to shake, and he sighed and did the same. Better have some ready for me, kid. It won't be cheap to get that sort of information out of a smith. It'll be worth it, though. If you say so. Why not just go to the capital? Find a master to apprentice under. Smith isn't exactly the most exciting job, but it's respectable. Your parents, well, your mother would probably refuse. 'Cause I don't want to spend decades learning, I need to learn fast. It's a job that takes decades to learn. He pointed out, but then shook his head. You're headstrong, but young. Maybe it'll be good to bite off more than you can chew. I can chew a lot, I argued back, and then blinked at how childish it made me sound. Sure. What about the pickaxe? I ordered it. Not exactly common stuff out here, it'll take a while. Thanks, Meltanar, you're way cooler than everyone says. Thanks, kid. Wait, what does everyone say? What does cooler mean? Hey, kid. I of course left the man stewing in my backhanded insult and skipped away. Heh heh. He was a guy with a serious ego, so it was fun to poke holes in it every once in a while. He was reliable, though. I'd get my pickaxe and go on an adventure soon. Well, once Mama took me, or I grew enough. Unfortunately, I wasn't really growing much. Ugh. Stupid elfling body. The jingle of the level up sounding in my ears made me grin widely as the mess of ice cubes all over the backyard was finally at an end. Generate ice cube level 10. Spell mastered. Mastery benefit +5 intellect. Yes! I cheered, rolling backwards only to yelp as I laid back on an ice cube. Okay, celebrate somewhere not covered in traps, I whispered, looking at the hundreds of ice cubes all over the backyard. I groaned a bit as I rose up, using so much mana and then drinking lemonade, then using it again always left me a bit achy. But hey, 5 more intellect? I wonder if I had enough mana to level up Holy Light again, or at the very least unlock and lock. Those spells were a bit of a mana hog, but they were so useful. Even in D&D lock and knock were top-tier wizard utility spells. Never know when you're being chased by an orc and you need to lock a door you just slammed shut behind you to earn yourself a bit of space. Heading inside, I was humming since another spell mastery was an amazing thing, and I heard Papa rummaging around in his workshop. Mama was out on a range, unfortunately, so it was just us. I headed up to my room. I could set up the guild, but there wasn't much going on today, and it just felt like an exploration day instead of an adventure day. The two were different after all. So I suited up, even if it made me look like a ranger. I grabbed my sword and shield, well, wooden sword and shield anyways, and then I grabbed a few bits and bobs, making sure I was fully equipped. Papa! I called out as I knocked on his workshop waiting for him to respond, and only entering once he did. Yes, Dora? I'm gonna go explore. I'll be back before it gets dark. Oh yes, that's good. Be safe. I will. I called out and ran out the back door. The sun was bright, the wind was mild, and the whole world was out there for me to explore. Then I sighed and turned around. Only a few moments to finagle everything, and I slipped on my quiver and bow around my shield and sword. Stupid bow, stupid animals run so fast. I'll get magic someday. Won't need a bow. I grumbled as I headed out, and then, as if I was already in the deep wilds, I crouched down and slipped into a stalking stance. If I found some more animals to skin, I could make more capes. And I had promised Kimmy. Even if it was cringe stealth archer gameplay. Through the bushes, across the fields, and among the trees I wandered. I wouldn't go too far. Otherwise, Mama would find out. But I could ran out for an hour or so and then head back. And that would bring me home in time for the sun to set. Plus, this totally wasn't what Mama said I wasn't allowed to do. This was just normal kid explorations, and not day trips to find ore. So, it was allowed. And all the while, I was adding things into my mental map of the world. It might only be short trips from my home, but for a little elfling that was good enough. And more importantly, this is what I wanted to do. Azeroth was my backyard. All of it. I just needed to step outside and explore the whole thing. Ow! I hissed, reaching up to rub my head as I looked up. Squirrels, I hissed, already dropping my sword and shield to grab my bow, but it chittered at me and ducked into a hole, meaning I couldn't make the shot. You'll pay for that, I yelled at the stupid squirrel as I reset my gear and grabbed my sword and shield again. Need to work on my stealth so I can sneak up on the damn squirrels. I cursed, then jolted, looking around to make sure no one had heard me curse. Gotta watch the potty mouth. Mama was not okay with it. Chapter 9. Well, Dora hunted it, Mama explained to Papa as she put out the rabbit stew. Oh, that's impressive, he said, looking towards me and smiling before turning back to his food. It's not that impressive. There are lots of rabbits around, and Mama did teach me some traps. I explained bashfully. Honestly, I had to go slow so I wasn't just wasting meat and stuff. I needed a lot of pelts for practice, but it felt wrong to just kill them and let the meat go to waste. Well, I like rabbit, Papa said firmly, and then started eating, which made me grin. You've been learning so well, Mama whispered, sounding super proud. And again, I didn't have the heart to tell her that I was totally not going to be a ranger. Not that I wasn't using the new hunting for more than just pelts. Each rabbit was 10 XP, and after a lot of work and a lot of dead rabbits, I'd leveled up again. Alah'Dorah, High Elf, Level 3, 10 over 300 XP. Strength 12, Agility Cheterpad Smit, plus Viens. Stamina 15 plus 1. Intellect 10 plus 35. Spirit 11 plus 6. Even if it was just 1 point in every stat, it was incredibly useful. I felt stronger, moved faster, and I actually felt a bit smarter. While I seemed to get more mana from the spell mastery bonus, I don't think it really impacted me quite as much as just a normal intellect point. Something to keep in mind. Well, it really helps give me things to work with. My daughter is so productive. She's got the energy of a 50-year-old. Mama said, laughing, and I blinked, having to process the words she said before just smiling. Is she? Papa asked, and then seemed to realize that was a weird question as Mama sent him her, "My husband is being cute" look. Yes, dear. Dora is very energetic for an elfling. Oh? Well, that's good. It is, when she isn't being precocious, Mama said, sending me a look. I instantly widened my eyes to enhance my puppy dog eyes and sent her my most innocent look. She just snorted at my attempt, not buying it. Oh well. Then, to my surprise, there was a knock at the door and all of us looked up. I'll check, I called out, jumping out. It happened from time to time that I'd get a late guild commission. Dora, don't run, and I'll get it, Mama called out, but I ignored her, hurrying to the door and opening it, then freezing solid. The man at the door was not someone from the village. The armor, the weapons, the smug superior look as if he was smelling shit despite the clean air. This was a high elf. His blue eyes lowered down, the quiet noise of his metal armor shifting just slightly as he took in the sight of me. "Papa! Mama! A weirdo is at the door!" I called out, noticing the narrowing of the elf's eyes at my call. "Really, Dora, what are you—" "You," Mama hissed, which jolted me a bit as she instantly moved forward in a blur and had me pushed back. "What do you want? If you think—" I was invited. The elf offered with a sneer and even pulled out a letter. "Ah, Uncle, you've arrived." "What?" Mama turned to look at Papa, who was stepping out the kitchen and even waving lightly at the other man. "Uncle?" "Hmm? Oh yes. Alah'Dorah, this is your grand-uncle Zotalana Arkanashola." "You are mistaken. As you are just Aran Allah, now Alna, we no longer share blood," was the prompt response, and Papa blinked a bit surprised before nodding. "Oh yes, I forget sometimes," he uttered, and I frowned. Was that Papa's full name? Alna. Nothing? I frowned because anyone calling my father nothing was about to get a punch in the crotch. "Aaron, you invited him here?" Mama asked pointedly, and Papa looked up from where he seemed to have gotten distracted and then saw the letter in. "Well, I'm not thinking of him as my grand-uncle. So, Zotalana." Then, it was in his hand, and Papa focused on it for a second. "Oh yes, the deal. You are interested then, Uncle?" You ask for lessons for your spawn in exchange for enchanting work, and you think the work of a man banished from the capital would interest me?" "Well, you're here?" Papa said, and I nearly snorted at the man's face shifted to irritation. "Yes, because your failure of a reputation is meaningless to me when it comes to your actual talents. You will enchant it." "I will. In exchange," Papa said firmly, and Zotalana looked irritated and then nodded. "I did not come all this way for nothing. It is agreed." "Excellent," Papa said, seemingly quite happy, and I just shot a look at Mama asking her what the fuck was going on. She obviously didn't know either. "I would like to know what is happening," Mama said in her best authority voice, and Papa actually squirmed a little as their eyes met for a second before his eyes drifted away. "Ah well, you know that Zotalana is a spellbreaker, and the best swordsman I know. Dora mentioned she wanted to learn to use a sword, so I reached out. A little enchanting work for lessons." He trailed off, probably realizing he hadn't actually mentioned this to anyone. But before Mama could berate him, I slammed into him. "Papa is the best," I told him firmly. Even if this was super awkward and might blow up in our face or something considering how snooty this guy was. My awkward, wonderful Papa had decided to go out on his own and try and do something nice for me. Something I really wanted, just from a casual comment. How could I not love him for that? "Ah, I'm glad you are happy, my light. I forgot to mention it," he offered to Mama and I as his hand ran through my hair. "You did, but I will forgive you, even if she is too young for sword training," Mama said with a breathy, laughing sigh. "Am not," I countered. "I could totally do it." She is, but I will offer her guidance while the enchanting is being done." Zotalana replied blandly, and Papa nodded. But Mama's eyes narrowed. "That won't be long at all. How long is he supposed to teach her?" "Oh, I said it in the letter. 6 months?" Papa offered, and Mama instantly shot a look at Zotalana. The man just looked disinterested in her look. "That is longer than the time it will take you to enchant something." "Oh yes, the enchantment won't take long at all, really. It's just a few workings on his spell shield to—" "Then it will be 6 months, or you will do no enchantments at all," Mama demanded, and before Zotalana could reply, Papa did. "I won't?" he asked, almost plaintive, and Mama's eyes, I noticed, rolled to the sky. "Not without proper payment, dear." "You are good for the fool. 6 months. Now it has been a long journey." He replied, and Mama realized he was just in our entryway, where guests would walk into the home without really being in the home. "Dinner just finished. You may join us," Mama said, sounding grouchy about it, and with that, the man still in armor, with a sword at his hip and a large shield behind him, stepped into our home. I was pulled to the side by Mama, and I watched as Zotalana walked inside. His fancy armor and robes just didn't seem like it would fit inside our humble and cozy tree home. But entered it he did, walking in, and soon he was settled around our kitchen table, and Mama made him a plate of the rabbit stew and biscuits Mama had made. He commented, I noticed, obviously dismissing the food, but once we were all settled back around the table, he did eat. It was quiet for a long time. I noticed as I slowly started eating, the normal atmosphere of fun and chatter gone, as if Zotalana gave off a stiffness aura. I didn't like it. "Spellbreaker, huh? That's cool," I offered, and he sent me a single look, his blue eyes locked onto me, with a clarity, and then dismissing me. "Gonna be like that, huh? Can we cancel the deal? I don't think I want to learn from a jerk," I said, and that caused the entire table to go doubly silent as I sipped at my stew. "What?" Papa asked, blinking in surprise as he'd been staring at his stew. "He's kinda a jerk, so I don't want to learn from him. Can we just send him back to the capital and be happy instead?" "We can't do that, Dora. I already said I would." "So? If you refuse, then he'll just leave. You can't promise something and then refuse. I mean, you can, though. What's gonna happen? He'll go back and complain about you. They already don't like you, so who cares? Everyone here in the village won't care." "Are you sure she is your daughter?" Zotalana spoke, almost arrogantly. "She has more political acumen than you, despite being a baby." "Baby?" I whispered. What an ass. "Yes." Dora was blessed with a sharp mind. Mama replied a bit pointedly, but it was Papa that cut through Zotalana's arrogance. "She's mine," Papa said, more rude than I had ever heard him. "She's got my talent in enchantment, and her mother's complexity. Someday Father will regret exiling her along with me. She'll be amazing." We'll see," he replied back, looking at my father strongly, then suddenly rising up. "I will find alternate accommodations during my stay." He rose up without another word and walked out. Barely even ate his stew, the jerk. This was complicated. I didn't like complicated. To my surprise, the next morning he showed up again. He wore less armor this time, still wearing super expensive robes that were heavily enchanted, but at least he didn't stand out quite as much. After a short talk with Mom at the doorway that I watched from the other room, she turned and nodded for me. I padded up and looked at Mama. "Go with him. He'll give you some sword training. He's good. So learn what you can. I'll be right here." "Okay." I agreed, and he turned without a word, already heading out. But he didn't just stop in the front yard. He kept walking through town as I followed after him. "Want me to get my wooden sword?" I asked, but no response came. He simply walked on. "Great. Are we sure we couldn't just refuse his stupid enchantment and make him go away?" We traveled to a place I wasn't really expecting. "Why are we at Magistrix Eltella's home?" I asked, but I was still ignored, and I felt myself frowning. This fucking guy. We walked to the back, and there, sitting against a post, was a metal blade. It was blunt, basically rounded edges, but no doubt still heavy as all hell. He walked over and suddenly drew his own blade. A real blade. "Pick it up." "You going to kill me or something?" "I doubt you'll get your enchantment if you do." Instead of answering, he just pointed the blade and I walked over. The metal blade looked iron, but it was actually fancy. A wooden and leather grip, and it was well made. Not something you'd just pick up in the village. This was from the capital. He'd brought it with him. Or maybe not. It looked old as well. I grabbed it and winced. as I brought it around. Heavy. Very, very heavy. But I adjusted my grip, and then angled it more like a greatsword than a normal blade, as otherwise I wouldn't be able to hold it, and when I finished, his eyes narrowed. I will teach, you will learn. Nothing else. Yeah? Then he swung, and I just barely brought up the sword in time before his sword came down. My arms wavered, and the metal blade of my own sword nearly smashed me right in the face. He'd purposefully done that. He hummed as if surprised, and then it started. He would swing, and I would barely keep the blade from smashing into me. Bruises immediately started growing on my shoulders where I would have to use to stop the swing. And then again. When I swung, or at least tried to, it amounted to nothing. It was too heavy, and I was too slow. And then he came down hard, and this time, even as my sword skill had started rising, I wasn't fast enough. The blunt, rounded edge of my own sword smashed me in the face. Foo! I cursed as I hit the floor, feeling blood already rushing, and I brought up my hand. Blood on my face. Not sure where from. This is all you can do. Go. Come back tomorrow. For another lesson. No, I said through a mouthful of blood as I rose up, glaring. Then I breathed in and out, and light burst from under my hand. A moment later, while the pain was still there, and I still had blood on my face, it wasn't the sharp pain of a wound, but just a dull ache, like a painful muscle ache. You have to teach me, and I'm not done, I told him bluntly. Rising back up, my energy revitalized even with the pain, even as I wiped my eyes on my sleeve as the pain did make me want to cry. I brought my sword up. So pick it up, I demanded to him, where he'd already put his sword back in its sheath and started to walk away. He said nothing all the while, just watching. Then slowly he drew his sword at first, holding it loosely, and then raising it up. He swung, and I barely blocked it again. But this time I did. Come on then. If you want to just abuse me, then I'll grind every ounce of XP for swords out of you. I closed one nostril and blew. Blood came up, making even more of a mess. I barely held on. My breath was a hot rush of exhaustion. Holy light might restore a lot, but it wasn't a perfect replacement for stamina. And I was tired. My everything hurt. It felt like every inch of me was aching and bruised. I could barely get one eye to stop closing as blood had flowed into it. And worse, my body was screaming. I'd actually gotten a stamina level out of it, putting me at 16. But that was nothing compared to my sword improvement. I stood back up, nose clear, and moved to bring the sword back up again. He readied his blade, but there was an interruption. And what is this? The voice was sharp, and I looked over through one eye. Magistrix Eltella stood there in all her glory. Her robes were probably worth more than the entire village's output for a year, but she was still old. Still tired-looking, but right now her eyes were sharp. Training. Ruining my lawn. She interrupted pointedly, looking down. Yeah, that was kind of a lot of blood. There was no words exchanged as Zotalana just stared, but he also didn't speak, which was kinda telling. He wasn't going to argue with her, huh? You'll clean this up, she demanded, and I just looked down. Well, I could do that. I still had plenty of mana, even with my holy light heals. With a few seconds of thought, I conjured a bottle of water. Without thinking, I just popped the cork open with my teeth and started pouring it out over the blood, fairly quickly washing most of it away into the grass and rocks around the yard. I meant for him to clean that child. Eltella spoke after a moment, and I just shrugged. It was my mess. Which was true, and a better answer than being embarrassed for not picking that up. With my second bottle, I just bent back and poured it over my face. Ow! I hissed as the water wasn't too bad, but I reached up to try and wash off some of the blood, and that hurt like heck. She's fine. Zotalana spoke, pointing his blade vaguely in my direction as I opened my eyes and rubbed a bit. Hey, that hurt like hell, but at least I could see out of both eyes now. New tech unlock? Wash away blood mid-fight? Definitely something to keep in mind. You are too rough. I was asked to train her. So I will. It is not my fault if a student can't handle the training, besides. Look at her. He spoke, and I finished wiping and looked up. Both older elves looked at me. What? I looked down. Was it something on my face? She's only a decade. 1. Eltella replied firmly, and he scoffed. She will quit, or she will succeed. He said back. The first time he truly seemed to backtalk her. Her eyes narrowed and she looked at me. Her eyes, blue and practically glowing with power, washed over me, and I once again wondered what the heck they were seeing. But finally she seemed to come to a decision. Then continue if you must. She said more to me than him, I think. And instead of walking away, she seemed to settle in, taking a seat to watch. That isn't... Continue, if you must. She repeated, interrupting Xotalan's words with pure, don't get smart with me energy. He looked away and I just shrugged at him, wincing right after. Ow. My shoulders hurt. Stretching a bit, I raised my blade up and my arms wobbled before I once more got ready. Very well. To my surprise, instead of just bashing me down, he came in slower, an elegant, almost hypnotic movement, and my sword was pushed away despite my will, and he nearly skewered me through, only stopping before his blade would touch me. You fight like a troll. The sword is heavy, and you are tired, but you are not a troll. Oh, are we talking now? I managed to get out before he lashed out, and his sword smacked mine nearly into my head again. Ow. Listen, and learn, he demanded, and to my surprise, he actually spoke from time to time, even reaching out and adjusting my grip and smacking an elbow when I let it fall too low. I was exhausted, and yet, my sword skill was rising. I could work with that. Swords level 6, 35/60ths. I'd gained 4 levels in one session, and I knew I wasn't even close to reaching the end of the XP train. But I was also now flat on my back just staring up at the sky. How I got here? I don't actually remember. I told you she was only a decade. I suppose you expect me to carry her home? I expect you to carry her inside. The tart reply hit just a bit harsh, and soon I was lifted up in arms that felt like steel rods and carried like a sack inside. Couldn't even Princess carry me or something? I was right. He is a jerk. Soon I was placed onto a fainting couch inside, and a drink. Something cool and sweet was brought to my lips. I took a few swallows and a few more, before backing away lightly. There, that's better, Eltella whispered to me, and I just sort of blinked at her. That's really good. Thank you, dear. She offered back, and soon I winced, as she brought a wet rag across my brow. Ow. Ah. Healing pain. You overdid it. Ow. I replied back simply because that's about as far as my brain wanted to process things. She will live. I am finished for the day. Xotalana replied from somewhere, and I blinked, ready to rise up and prove that he wasn't, but a hand was there holding me down. You will inform her mother or father, then you may be finished for the day. I'm not a child. Then do not act like one. Ooh, sick burn. I blinked as both adults looked at me. Oh, I said that out loud. Whatever. I'm tired. Chapter 10. Ouch! I hissed as Mama carefully cradled my cheeks, her concerned face very, very close. He hurt you? I mean, in training. And he was a jerk, but I'll talk to him. Mama hissed, rising up, but to my surprise she stopped as Eltella was there, and both women looked at each other for a moment. He was being a fool. My apologies. It's his fault, not your own. So I hear. She's an excellent healer. After a rest, she'll be fine. Eltella explained, and Mama frowned, her lips pursing for a moment, but she nodded. I know. Dora picked up the healing spell and has been using it ever since. She's rambunctious. It's not the first time I've caught her wincing from heel pain. Indeed, that doesn't surprise me after what I saw today. Those ancient eyes looked at me again. You go too far. No. If I want to see the world, I'll need way harder training than this. I decided, then winced. Ow. My cheek hurts. No more hard training at all. You're only a decade, Mama snapped, and looked at Eltella. Why did you put a stop to this? The Magistrix looked at me, seemingly ignoring my mother for a long time. She isn't wrong. If she wants to go out into the world, it's dangerous. She had the will to see it through, so I allowed her. Even if I agree it's too much. That last part was definitely pointed towards me. That is not an excuse, Mama hissed, and reached out to just straight up pick me up, hauling me up even as I hissed a bit until she was holding me, and then she stalked out of the large home. She was quiet all the way back, just stomping along the quiet road. Sorry, I made you worry. I'm not angry at your Dora. You are very young, and you had no idea what was going to happen. You can't expect to understand when training is too much. That is meant to be your elder's job. I think I surprised him. Oh? Mama asked, but she wasn't really looking at me as we walked into the house. He tried to end it almost right away, but I healed my face where the sword hit me and demanded he continue. Of course you did, Mama whispered as she climbed upstairs. He was surprised, and so he kept going. And then Eltella came out, and she made him actually start teaching? At least from then on he started actually talking and showed me when I was holding the sword wrong and stuff. That's not an excuse for him to act that way, Mama said, and then placed me gently on my bed. I'm not going to let this continue. Mama, please? I said, instead of trying to argue with her right away. She slowly took a seat beside me on the bed and started sort of putting me under the covers. Dora, this is too much. Is it? I said, and realized how truthful I was. I'm fine. I mean, I'm ouchy, but I'll be fine tomorrow, and I learned a lot. Like a lot. So much. It's not worth seeing you hurt? Then I just won't get hurt, I told her, reaching up, flexing my arm, which wasn't a good idea, 'cause, ooh, noodly arm. Instead, I just sent her my most confident look. It wasn't fun, but I want to try again, at least until I smack a sword into his face. Mama snorted, but she fluffed my pillow a bit behind my head and gently touched a finger along my brow. It still hurt a bit, but it was also comforting. Why don't we just practice your archery a bit instead? We can do it every day. I need to learn how to use a sword, though, but I'm always up for more time with you. Even if I didn't want to be an archer. The unspoken words were there. Mama noticed it, and she sighed. My daughter, obsessed with swords, you could be a ranger. Go out with me. We can explore the woods. There are plenty of things to see. You don't need to travel so far. To go beyond where it's safe. I didn't say anything, just looking at her, until she looked away. I'll talk with him, and maybe you can continue training. Thanks, Mama. Don't thank me yet. Go to sleep. You'll recover from the heel pain sooner. I closed my eyes, and honestly I was fairly tired despite it being still just the afternoon. I agreed to train her, not show off in front of an audience. Then perhaps you should have acted more responsible with the duty, Mama said bluntly as she crossed her legs and sat back against the chair on the porch. Eltella, right beside her, just smiled, half amused as he looked over both women and seemed to exhale annoyed. Pick it up, he said then, turning back to me, and I nodded, but stalled. That wasn't the same training sword. It was the same design. A hard iron rod more than a blade, and well made and wrapped hilts, but it was fit much closer to someone my size. I glanced at him, and he said nothing as I took the blade from where it was resting, and this time I could actually hold it in one hand. Not that I was going to do that, as he stepped in and dropped a blow, and I needed both arms just to stop it from smashing into me. So we were back to this? Very well. I was more mobile now, faster, and with a sword properly sized, even if it was still heavy, I was able to react. He tested me, prodding at weak points I hadn't even registered. He allowed me to swing at him, parrying and controlling me entirely until I was tired, and then poking a hole through my defense and into my kidney. Ow. It was better today, and he wasn't just aggressively smashing me. Not that he didn't. Ow! I hissed as he'd casually just kicked my foot out right from under me as I'd swung at him and sent me rolling in the grass. I hissed a bit and looked at my elbow. Bit of blood. It's fine. Save the mana and healing for more serious injuries. Dora! Mama was there though, already, halfway across the distance between us, but I held up a hand at her. I'm fine, I assured her as I rose up and once more matched my stupid grand-uncle's stance. Ready to continue. I watched Mama out of the corner of my eye slow and stop, and then back up. Slowly at first, but she ended up leaning against the porch and watching as I moved in again. Swords level 650-60. Swords level 652-60ths. Swords level 659-60ths. Swords level 71/70. Swords level 75/70ths. The numbers slowly flowed as we swung, and despite needing to stop and rest from time to time, holy light, some awesome lemonade and some small snacks that El Telahad put out for both of us. I looked up at my granduncle as I chewed the sandwich she had made. He swallowed his own. Barely any sweat on his brow, but there was some. This was still exercise, even if it was light. He looked down at me, and I nodded. My breath was already evening out, and I was ready for more. Ready for more? I asked, and he just looked me over. Very well. Oh, we should do shields sometime too. I plan on using a shield in the future. Is that so? Yup. Shields are great, and you never know when you might need one when you're out in the wilds. If you are capable, I will consider it, he said. But that wasn't a yes. Oh well. I limbered up, grabbed my practice sword and prepared myself, and he did the same. Then we continued, swinging swords and whispered words. He spoke at least, always critiquing, sometimes harshly. Your foot is out of place. You will lose it. Raise your elbow. What are you, a troll? Unable to stand properly? You flail like a human swinging a hoe. Control your movements and stop dipping. I would have grown more annoyed if the comments didn't also tend to come with alerts for more sword levels. It didn't matter what he said, or how bad I was now, because with every point I was getting better. And when I got good enough, I could finally smack him in the face. Unfortunately, no matter what I wanted, I slowly grew tired until I simply couldn't continue anymore. Even with healing, my body just said no, something to keep in mind. Exhaustion was still a factor. I see you are done. I think so. I managed out between gasps, and he ignored me, already walking away. Perfect time for a sneak attack, but I think I'd rather just breathe for now. Dora. Mama, I said in between slow gasps for air. You okay? Are you hurt? Just tired, I informed her, and then threw her a weak thumbs up to prove it. She healed herself well. Eltela said, having stood up and walked over, passing Zotalana and giving him a nod as she did. She'll only need some rest and she'll be fine. Maybe another day before she'll need a proper rest. I think she'll take that rest day now. Tomorrow, no training. Ah. I really wanted to hit level 10. I was so close. Rest, you are pushing yourself hard, and I don't want you to get sick, Mama ordered, and I nodded. Soon, I was carried piggyback all the way back home, which was nice. This felt better than yesterday's training. I could definitely do this. I don't think I can do this, I shrieked as I ran away. You wish to fight with shields? Yeah, me too. Before you use a shield, you will learn to face them, Zotalana said, and continued to chase me around the yard. Fighting his stupid tower shield was impossible. All I could do was swing my sword into his stupid shield and make it ding a bit, but then he just slammed it into my face and ran me over, stabbing me a few times with his sword for good measure. Getting almost stabbed by a super sharp sword over and over was scary. Stop running. Well, tell me what to do then, I argued back. I didn't want to gun bonked in the face with a massive metal slab right now. Hold your feet, he ordered, and I slid to a stop and turned. Good. Prepare yourself. The shield is the distraction, it is not the target. You do not attack the shield. He continued, and I prepared myself. If I strike with the shield, I am no longer blocked. Slip in. If I hold the shield, then slip around. His voice was harsh, and then he was on me, and I did. He moved to slam the shield forward again, and I did what I could, trying to slip to the side and push my blade in, but I only got half slammed by the shield and then knocked into the dust. Again. Ow. You are not hurt. I've seen you take worse and get up. Now again. Right. I grumbled, rising up and preparing myself. I got up, and as he struck, I did as well. My blade hit only the edge of his shield, which he shifted slightly as he moved in, and a moment later I was smacked upside the head by the flat of his blade. He just cut my head off. But as I stumbled back, it was something else that had me distracted. Swords, level 10, 100th. Apprentice Swords has been learned. Apprentice Swords, parry skill unlocked. I breathed in and out as Zotalana circled me, ready to bash me in again, but I was just struggling to comprehend what just happened as I felt myself adjusting slightly. Instinct taking over, I shifted, and when Zotalana moved in, I once more moved away from his shield, his sword coming down to smack me, and brought my sword up, and just as he tried to whack me upside the head, my training blade was there, dragging the sword away just a tiny amount, and I swung. He was open. Sword missed, and shield in the wrong spot, and... Ow! I heard as I opened my eyes and spit out some of the grass. What happened? You believed you had succeeded in bypassing my defenses? I smacked you for it. Yeah, I feel that. He'd adjusted and hit me with the shield? I think. I had you off balance. You did no such thing. How'd you bring the shield around? Was it your shield? It was. Despite being large and seemingly heavy, I've spent more time with this shield in my hand than you have spent breathing. Right. Right. I rubbed at my head. Okay, that hurt. But I don't think he really bludgeoned me that hard. It was mostly the surprise that sent me tumbling. I rose up and adjusted my blade in the ready stance. And we went again. Swords level 1023 over 100. Parry level 25/20ths. That was something new. Parry hung down under swords, connected to it, in a way I hadn't seen any skill do yet. But at least it was there, leveling up. I'd constantly tried to parry Zotalana's stupid sword as he used his shield, with not a huge amount of success. But I was doing it. Leveling up was happening. I'd even gained an extra strength point, putting me up to 13. Considering strength was one of the stats I hadn't earned any extra stats for, that was useful. Dora. Yes, Mama, I called out. We hadn't trained until collapse today, so I was back home, mostly just relaxing in my room, trying to stop my achy limbs from annoying me. Everything okay? Yeah? Why? I called back, and then even got up with a light groan to stick my head out the door. Mama was at the staircase looking at me quietly for a moment. What? You're quiet. So, Dora, you're never quiet unless you're sleeping. It's always something. Odd magic or noises. You okay? I'm just relaxing. I can be quiet. Okay, dear. I puffed up at her. How rude. I could be quiet. I read books and stuff. Sure, I tended to like moving around since it was important to keep training, but that was so mean. Mama went back down the stairs checking on me like I was about to explode or something. I'd only exploded like once. I went back into my room and decided to pull out my journal, 'cause I could too be quiet. Tapping the pages, I looked it over. My last quests had been just normal things, no new spells since the ice cubes or anything, but that was okay. But each signature marking a complete quest was satisfying. I was tired, my body hurt, but with healing magic it was just achy, rather than what muscle pain could really feel like. But as I stared at the pages of my journal, at all the little quests I'd taken, it was worth it. Every bump, bruise, scratch, cut, or broken bone would be worth it. Because this was an adventure, not just walking through a park, which is what the Eversong Woods felt like. A safe, managed park. But I'd go out to see the world and there would be danger, but I'd get strong enough to do something good. I'd help people and defeat bad people and see amazing things and do amazing things. Hee hee! I grabbed a pencil, or at least the next best thing, and started sketching. I was no great artist, but even I could doodle an image of me in plate armor bashing my amazing, super cool sword into Zotalana's face over and over. I'd definitely get my hit in. So I have to take a break. So that's where you've been. You missed classes. Yeah, well, this was more important, and it's only a temporary thing, so I need to do it as much as I can. I said, pouting a bit. I was at school, hanging out with Kimmy during break, instead of sword fighting, and it was way more lame. Well, I'm glad you're back, she offered, and I looked up. The others aren't as fun. They don't want to play games with me. Want to play a game, Kimmy? Yes, she said cheerfully, laughing at my offer, and I nodded. Even if I wanted to focus on my training, that didn't mean that was all there was. Come on, let's start with tag, and then we can do something else, I said, then grinned and poked her side, where she is ticklish, so she spasmed out, and then I could run away. Hey, 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 that's cheating, she yelled after me. What is this? My shield. Since you won't give me one, I said, holding up my makeshift shield. The piece of wood that I'd gotten some straps and clothes and made into my first shield had eventually fallen apart. This one was a bit better with some rabbit hide helping to hold it all together. You are jesting. Nope, shield time, I said, holding it out as ready for battle. Zotalana looked at me as if I was some disgusting little creature, which you know. Fair. Little kids could be pretty gross, but none of that was making with the shield training. You are... that is... He started and stopped, and I actually had to stop as... I think I short-circuited him? No. Yes, I argued back, and he unfortunately didn't just repeat himself so we could go around in a circle for a bit. You are acting like a fool. I will not play this game. It's not a game. Sure, a real shield would be better, but what if I'm out in the wilderness and I lose my shield, and all I have is some wood and straps and stuff? This is nonsense. Go home for the day if this is how you take my training. No, I repeated back to him this time. You have to train me, and so I'm here. And I think you just didn't want to teach me how to use a shield because it's not part of the deal, so I'll just bring my own and do it myself. I wondered how long it would take for you to realize I have no intention to teach you the shield. See? So now you have to. I do not. Nor will I. This is... Ah dear. That's not going to do you much good. Use this. Eltella called out, interrupting us both. As I looked up, she'd wandered into the house and came out with a round shield, one that was a real shield, and it even matched the training swords in looks, like they were part of a set. I will not teach her the shield, Zotalana snapped, and then went silent as Eltella walked forward until they were nearly looking at each other. Is that so? She asked, so blandly that it was definitely a threat. It is. She is not of my blood. I am stuck to the letter of the deal and no more. Not even you can simply alter my deal, nor should you. You are correct. I simply expected you to act like the man I expected of you. A talented child stands before you, one you were hired to train, and you spurn what is expected. A great man, wasn't it? He flinched back like he'd been slapped. Damn! Eltella just hit him with a crit for sure. I just didn't know what she meant. I am an elite spellbreaker. I've stood beside the king himself. I've trained cadres of spellbreakers because of my talents. I am unmatched with a blade, and my voice is heard in the very palace itself. I am a great man. Would your grandfather think the same? The words were silent, but Zotalana went still, and he looked halfway to pure rage, like he wanted to punch her. Or worse. That was unkind of me. She agreed, and I slowly felt my own tension ease as he stomped away, seemingly taking a moment to regain himself. Then he came back. Eltella hadn't moved, and he took the shield from her and tossed it. It went spinning and landed in front of me, in the grass. Take that trash off and get ready, girl. I will not be insulted by that rubbish. Yeah, okay. I agreed quietly because things were still awkward. Taking a moment to switch out the shield, I strapped it in. My knowledge at least good enough to do that properly, but as I looked inside, the faded cuts in the back of the wood stood out, almost like a child cutting words into the back of the shield. Zotalana, this was his shield. I raised it, and he came at me in a rush, smashing his shield into mine and sending me flying back as he did a new trick, kicking the bottom of his shield which sent it into me and lifting me off my feet. Ow.